You're listening to The Starting Zone, a podcast about World of Warcraft and the people who play it. And now, here are your hosts.
Well, hello and welcome to The Starting Zone, the podcast about World of Warcraft, the people who play it. Today is August 3rd, 2025, and my name is Spencer Downey. Thank you so much for listening and subscribing to the podcast. I am joined, as always, by my co-host, Jason Lucas. Jason, how are you doing on this fine Sunday? We are. Yep. Yeah, it has. Let's just pause for one moment here, because apparently people are having trouble hearing you here. One sec. This is what Windows Updates does, just so all of chat is aware. Yeah, this should be... I don't know why things go to default, but they go to default. All right, let's test Jason. Jason, say something. Okay. Let's see if
Testing.
Everyone can hear you.
Are we going out to Twitch?
So you definitely are. So everyone's good. You can all hear Jason. Looks like that's a yes from what my meters are showing. Perfect. All right, thumbs up. All right, cool. Jumping back in. Yeah, I definitely am feeling the pinch, actually, a little bit opposite of you. I'm feeling the pressure of, oh my goodness, it's right here. Working as someone who works in the education industry for my outside of WoW job, I definitely am someone who is like, wow, the school's just about to start for everybody. Everyone's coming back to campus. There's all this stuff we're trying to get in order. I'm in the middle of my overlap. A lot of the programs I support run for 16 months and they start in June. So I'm like right in that heart of where things are kind of, kicking off, where I'm running two things at the same time. So I am like busy. So there's a couple things on my list I need to get to either today or tomorrow, obviously. But I did manage to get the Mists of Pandaria mount done. I did the starting area. I made sure I fit that in last weekend after the show. So that's all good and good to go. So I'm happy with that. Raid was still a one night clear, which was great. There was a mandatory meeting we had on Monday about the raid bosses and stuff there, which fortunately they're recording, so I had to miss the first little bit of it for some work stuff, but caught up on that, which is good. I then am now part of like a planning session for when we're going to be doing armor stacks for Mythic Zero runs next week, because that's going to happen. So there's a Wednesday night for me is going to be like 4 hours of Mythic Zeros on two different characters to make sure that we get armor stacks in for everyone who's looking to do that. So that's happening. And then, tonight's still our last raid, so we'll be going in doing that. Tomorrow will be another mandatory meeting. We'll cover the last three bosses. And then, we're kicking off. So I am busy. It is crazy the amount of stuff going on, and I'm looking forward to. I have tomorrow off from work, which will be perfect because that'll be my any last minute things I need to do will be happening probably during that slot because we're gonna record this show. By the time I sort of finish recording the show, get dinner going, have dinner, I'm back into raid and I'll be raiding. And so it's whatever I do after raid / whatever I do tomorrow during the day. So that is my limited window for whatever it is I still want to finish up. But yeah, it's a little wild that we're this close to this big of a patch. I did not expect this patch to be this large. I didn't at all. This past week has raised a lot of people's eyebrows with the amount of class tuning that's happening, especially this close to the release of the patch. There are a lot of people out there who were like, well, my class is dead, and well, this has changed, well, that's happening. And it's not something I think anyone was really expecting to have happen. So it reminds me a little bit of last season when we were coming into that last part, and suddenly, my evoker plans dramatically changed. And I'm wondering if we're going to have a really smooth launch or whether this first week is going to have a whole bunch more tuning happening during it. Like I do feel like they might have pushed the envelope a little far in some directions for some classes, and we'll see some dialing back or some dialing up of some things after the first week of content people dive into here. So yeah, lots to talk about on the show.
Yeah,
it's massive.
We probably will see that. And I mean, tuning is a never-ending battle in WoW, of course, but I think the big thing is they're kind of setting a precedent of making really huge tuning changes very late in PTR, which obviously, you would hope that they're responding to PTR data, but also the most engaged players are going to be playing on PTR. Probably some of the highest skill players are really doing the PTR testing, which may skew the numbers. I think that, it almost feels like the rug pulling out from under you when they make huge changes, like the last week of PTR or whatever, which we talked about that some last week because they made a bunch of changes, and then again this week as well. So it is setting kind of a weird precedent for this, super late season tuning. We know there's going to be tuning for weeks and weeks after the patch launches, but, establishing that baseline for people, I think has been the expectation for a long time. So, that's one thing. And I also think, even though I have everything cleared off my plate and I'm ready and excited for Ghosts, I do think 5 months is just too short for a season. I think that 6 months is the sweet spot. So, it's been tough for people. This week we did our last raid night in Liberation of Undermine. We did one more round of achievements. This was the week we said we were going to do achievements, but we ended up doing 2 weeks because I was just like, why don't we also do it this week? Different, people can make different nights, whatever. It's still summertime. We have nothing left to do in Heroic anyway. So we did another run. I think 2 people needed about 1 or 2 achievements that they had missed. And then we basically did the whole thing for one guy because he had almost nothing, which, that was fine. But one cool thing was, I didn't know this, there's a non-meta achievement on Mugsy. There's an achievement on Mugsy that's not part of the meta achievement for the mount that gives you a toy, but you have to do it by there's something you have to pick up before One Armed Bandit. Then you have to kill One Armed Bandit and then kill Mugsy, and it's like a 20-minute timer on this buff that you have. Basically everybody has to get dyed the same color, either green or purple, and then the dye fountains shut off after you kill One Armed Bandit, so you can't backtrack and go. Luckily, we had somebody who just happened to switch tunes after we killed the first boss, so we all just zipped out, reset the instance, changed the raid leader. That person swapped tunes back, and we could go in and do that. So that was neat. Even if people who came both weeks, they still got something new for showing up, which was kind of cool.
Very cool.
Toy puts the pipes down with the dye on it, so that you can dye yourself in the dye spraying out of the pipe. So that was cool. I did a couple keys. I wasn't really going to, but some people wanted to do some stuff. One of my very good friends, maybe among my best WoW friends, she's been out most of the season just because of real life stuff, work stuff, family stuff, whatever. But, she wants to get back in for season 3, and she's been showing up, and she was just like, hey, I want to try to get 3K. and she left off at like 2,700.
It's not.
So
I mean, it's doable.
it's not undoable, but it's a lot of work, and it's late in the season. And it's a lot of
Yeah.
keys that people don't want to do. But I was like, I'll help you. We'll do a couple. We got her like a few points that night. It's hard to find, the time and the people willing to help to do that stuff this late in the process. Thankfully, I ended up only doing like 2 keys with her, and I think only one of them she really got any kind of points from. But she did connect with a bunch of people from the team yesterday and finish up 3K right under the wire.
Awesome.
So that's cool. Yeah, I mean, like I said, listen, I can help you if you absolutely need me to, but I had other stuff going on yesterday, so I said, let me know. Let me know how it goes. Good luck, whatever. But so that was nice. It was just a much lighter week of WoW overall than it had been, because I was doing all that, last minute stuff. Let me do underpin. Let me finish up all these patch features, all this stuff.
Yeah.
But I was like, man, I want to play. So I said, you know what? I'm going to level my Mag'har Orc Warrior. I don't have a Horde tune at 80 this expansion, so Winds is going on. I can do it pretty fast. I said, let me play Fury, and I'll try out single button assist Fury, and that was fun. I had a good time with that. So he's all done, and I got him like into, I don't know, the 620s or something in terms of item level and 4-piece and all that, because it's just sitting there. And so then once I did that, I'm like, okay, it is finally time to dump my Undercoin, because that's going to reset with patch. So what I ended up doing was, there's actually, you can buy, except for trinkets, you can buy like full veteran gear from Sir Finley at the Delvers HQ. Yep. So I went through all these tunes I've leveled recently since Winds kicked back in, and just, okay, any slots. You can also warband transfer Undercoin. So anybody that had sub-veteran gear anywhere other than trinkets, I just filled out their inventory, and then I dumped the rest into bags of Delver's reagents, which you get a lot of tinder boxes and other stuff out of that. So that was a really good thing to do. No point in just letting an Undercoin expire. So yeah, that felt really nice. Now, every tune I have, all 14 of them I have at 80, are like ready to play Ghosts of Koresh. And I got a little stack of reagents for, we're going to have a lot of crafting and stuff coming up as we get the item level bump. So that was like the last, I had saved this stuff because I had in the back of my mind, like, if I decide to level the Mag'har Warrior, let me keep a tiny little stash of Warbound gear, and I'll hang on to my Undercoin until the last minute. And then once I finished leveling that tune, I was like, okay, this is actually done now. I can just get rid of all this stuff. And that was really like the period on the season 2 sentence, right? Like that was literally like, there is nothing else I can think of that I am going to do before August 5th. So that was kind of my week, and I'm just ready to go.
All right. I mean, I get it entirely about being ready to go. I am not. I haven't even cleaned my bank, man. I gotta clean my bank. That's 2 hours of work right there for me. At some point, I need to sit down and do. It's one of those things where you're like, I wish like during maintenance you could just do a few things and log off and log back in and have the patch applied, because that'd be a great thing to do during maintenance. But yeah, no, I got some work to do. So like I said, that's on my agenda for today and tomorrow. Before that patch hits, is clean up the bank. Anything last things I want to finish off, I need to make sure are in order. And then it'll be patch hits and we're good to go. I haven't even spent my Undercoin yet. Need to do that. That's on my list. I did spend my dinars. Those are gone. Bought myself Jasters to make sure I had that. Bought myself Priory Trinket to make sure I had that. And then I actually got a Moxie's Mug Jug out of my vault this week. So that was great. So I was thrilled to see that. So that sort of finished off another one of the concerns I had, because there's still going to be times where I'm doing DPS, and that's going to be valuable. My expectation came true, which is that, I mean, again, we'll talk about it a little bit on the show. We saw trinket nerfs come out this week. That means that we have basically all the raid trinkets are going to be getting nerfed next week once that patch goes live. So the dungeon ones haven't been touched, which means the dungeon ones are the ones that are going to be really valuable. So I definitely wanted to be sure I got that Priory Trinket in there. And, I wish I could have gotten the BlazeCon Wax one as well, but I also haven't been farming for that necessarily, as far as like doing Mythic Plus on a regular basis to try and get the drop, just because it felt like such an infinitesimal chance with the amount of stuff in that pool. So, it is what it is. And I'm as ready as I can be character-wise as far as like gear goes, going into this next week, where we're going to start getting 691s or whatever out of Mythic Zeros. So that'll certainly replace some gear, which will be good to see. So yeah. All right. With that, I guess let's hop into what's going on this week in World of Warcraft. All right, this week is the Arena Skirmish bonus event, meaning that the Sign of the Skirmisher buff is up, increasing honor gains from arena skirmishes and wins by 50%, and there's a quest to win 10 of them, which gets you some conquest and honor as well. So be sure you're checking that out. There's apparently also a cache of heroic liberation of Undermine gear. Is that left over in the note, or is that actually a thing for arena skirmishes now?
Oh yeah, no, that's
left
sorry,
over.
that's
left
mistake.
over. I'm just making sure. I was like, wait a minute. Did
That
they
was
up
the
this
end
reward?
Yeah, that would be something else. No, that's from Turbulent Time Ways.
Time Ways. Yeah,
I had that line in for the last 7 weeks of Time Ways.
I read it and I'm like, I have to verify this because Jason might have caught on to something that I didn't. So yeah, no, there's no reward like that. It's just conquest and some honor. So nothing.
And even if they added one, it would never be in a preseason patch week. But this is like the sort of the perfect event to have for patch week because. I don't know. Will you even get conquest? Probably not, because there won't be an active PvP season.
I don't think you do. You probably just get gold. There's probably gold and honor. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like there's just no. They're not even giving you anything that is. They're not giving you an item that's immediately deprecated or anything like that. There's no new item that it's like, oh, you have to do this week because you get this item early. So it's it's fine. It's there. Get some extra honor or whatever for doing some arena skirmishes if you want to.
Yeah. It is Titan Disc Fragment Week. You'll be picking up that quest this week and, doing that for your first spark is what you'll be doing. So you'll get your first spark off of that probably this week. And then obviously next week would be nothing. And the week after that would be your second spark fragment. So second week of the season being out would be when you get your first actual craftable to upgrade one of your craftable pieces. That seems to be the timeline that we're looking at here, provided that this Titan Disc Fragment quest actually gives you a spark, which I assume it should, although the season hasn't started yet. So I don't really know. We'll find out what that actually rewards when it happens.
They actually laid out the Spark schedule in the patch notes, which we'll get into. Good. Because since they put the Spark system in, it's always been the sort of like, well, what's the schedule like and how does it work? They're actually updating it in a way that is more communicative for Season 3. So good news there. But just make sure. We heard from actually Arajian in the Discord mention that he tried on PTR, like caching stuff in and didn't really get anything notable. Did get new weathered crests for previously completed weeklies, but if you're playing a lot, you're probably gonna have a ton of weathered crests walking around if you're doing campaign questing and stuff this week. I don't think you'll be hurting for weathereds, but something to keep in mind. You could cash in your older weeklies after patch and get some new weathereds and what have you.
Yeah, if anyone's curious as to why I wasn't up to speed on that, the spark information is on page 50 of 64 for our notes. So that is the size of our notes for this week, and I just missed that one little paragraph, and so I'm just going to cover it now because everyone's right here, and we're already talking about sparks. But the availability during the first week of Ghosts of Koresh, each character can obtain 2 fractured sparks of Starlight, one from any activity that grants a Pinnacle cache, and one from any catch-up source, which would be like your Mythic Plus. And doing like, I guess technically the theater event counts, like things like that count towards helping you out getting those sparks. I think you can maybe get them at Delves too. There's a bunch of catch-up sources that exist for that. And beginning of week 2, players can obtain 1 fractured spark of Starlight from the first Pinnacle activity they complete that week, as in seasons prior. As far as staying up to date, when a character obtains a fractured spark of Starlight, they also receive a new currency called Starlight Spark Dust. Examining Starlight Spark Dust in the currency panel will show you how many fractured sparks you've obtained along with the current seasonal cap. And so catching up, if a character falls behind completing max level content such as Delves, Raids, Mythic Plus, Instance PvP, certain outdoor events, has a chance to drop a fractured spark of Starlight. So yeah, there's your catch-ups right there at the end. And yeah, overall, it sounds like, during the first week of Ghost of Koresh, we're getting ourselves 2 fractured sparks of Starlight, which means we can make ourselves 1 crafted piece during that first week. So that's going to be gravy. Looking forward to that. That's for sure.
I guess I don't know what this means for catalyst charges. Like, will we get a catalyst charge week 1, or are we going to have to wait till week 2 of the season? Because what was really nice in previous seasons was having the sparks on the odd weeks and the catalyst charges on the even weeks. So you always had something to look forward to. That was an upgrade early in the season, and that sync got kind of thrown off. They got synced up in season 2, so it was like every other week was a spark and a catalyst charge, which just, I don't know, it just kind of feels different. So I'm glad they're doing that, and I'm glad that they're putting it's not a super elegant way to track it, but at least you can track how many spark fragments you've earned on a character for the season, so if you have more you can get or what have you. So that's a nice feature. So just I like the communication, and I like the fact that there's some way to know how many sparks you're supposed to have.
Yeah, it's a similar thing with crests, right? It's good to know where the caps are as far as crests go, and being able to track how far behind you are and whatnot is always a nice thing. I also like that there's a currency that kind of helps you catch up as well, which is nice. Okay. So Titan Disc Fragments is this week. After that, we have Shadowpan Showdown. Shadowpan Showdown is stepping into Tiger's Peak Arena and getting ready for the Shadowpan Showdown, which is that each team controls a boss, and that those bosses fight each other, and the first team to defeat the other team's boss wins. And so you can be messing with the other team or messing with the other players or their boss and just trying to defeat it faster. You can be healing your own boss. You can be tanking their boss so their boss isn't beating on your boss. All that stuff can happen. It's a neat dynamic. This is one of the brawls that was offline for a good chunk of time, but came back and is up and running. So if folks are wanting to check out Shadowpan Showdown, they can. It will get you some Marks of Honor, Conquest, and Honor if you win it. Although, as Jason pointed out earlier, probably not the Conquest because of this particular week. So just keep that in mind when you're looking at it.
We have had some reports that some of the brawls just haven't been functioning. I did queue into a Deep Wind Dunk today, and I did a Deep Wind Dunk. Shadowpan Showdown, like you mentioned, has been one of the wonkier ones across its history. So, your mileage may vary. If you try to queue into it, you may end up in a different one, but that's what's on the calendar at least.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, the Godfather is still up, still a world boss. If you want some 642s for your character when you're just sort of getting going, it's a really easy way to get down there and guarantee it. Or just don't forget about the ones you've put away in your war bank already if you've been doing this all along. For those new characters that you're leveling up, like that Maghar Orc, you're just getting to 80. When it comes to Mythic Plus, Devour is what's supposed to be kicking off this week for Mythic Plus, but it's not, obviously, because we're out of season, so you won't be able to do that. So don't worry about Mythic Plus this week, because we're going into Mythic Zeros. That's what you're going to have access to.
Yeah, I guess, I can't imagine what the real benefit to doing it is. You're not going to get anything that you want, but the Season 2 dungeon should still be in rotation. I guess if you really want to say goodbye to something that's rotating out. I'm not sure if you can even earn the plus 10 achievements for the teleports. I think that gets shut off with patch because all the class changes and stuff, but I don't know. They're there. I guess we'll see. I will not be stepping into anything. I mean, I'll be doing Mythic Zeros for sure.
Yeah.
I think if nothing else. So Mythic Zeros dropped 681 baseline, and also you can do the new dungeon and stuff, which is probably what you want to be checking out this week. Just kind of dive into the new stuff. A Mythic Zero, if you're a seasoned Keystone runner, a Mythic Zero is going to be pretty easy, even a brand new one, but at least you get a feel for the layout and kind of what you fight in there and everything. So you probably want to be just doing, Mythic Zero stuff this week. If you're switching tunes, it's great for item level. I mean, 681 baseline basically catches you right up to the end of Season 2, right? You're only 3 item levels off of the highest stuff you could get from any other rewards. So if you have a new main, or maybe you missed a bunch of Season 2 or whatever, Mythic Zeros are also daily lockouts now, right? So you can run a bunch of these next week. That would be my recommendation for your dungeon time, is get in there, get some Mythic Zeros going, maybe get some new gear, get some old stuff replaced, and just get ready to go for Season 3 starting on the 12th.
Yeah, I actually, I'm not certain they are daily lockout. I mean, they were daily lockouts up for a long time. I don't know if they are during this first week, but if they are, then by all means get in there for sure. The 681, the important note on that is that that is the start of the champion track. So the gear you're getting at 681, you can then use Valor Stones and Crests to upgrade to being higher item level than 681. You're getting the literal champion baseline gear. So that's where it's attractive. That's where these armor stacks and whatnot that I'm talking about doing work out really well. But yeah, I we'll have to see how the week plays out for folks and what people end up getting. But that is definitely an easy way to get a bunch of gear at a very high item level. So you're running into next raid week, like almost at essentially normal raid item level. Like let's just, 681 the champion track is normal raid. So if you are picking up that gear, then you're walking in there where you should be. Like, and some of the gear dropping out of there is going to replace what you got, but not a lot of it. So just keep that in mind. Okay. Winds of Wisdom is in its final week. That's right. It's going away on the 12th of August. So if you are someone who wants to take care of the Winds of Wisdom, the Winds of Mysterious Fortune, then be sure you are taking advantage of that. It is going away soon. If there's still a mount or something you're hunting for, be sure you are taking advantage of that benefit while you can. Because yeah, it's going to be going. I went and did an ICC. I went and did a few other, of the older raids. I actually did because I just missed it. I went and did the Argent tournament just because I just dig at Argent tournament you just walk in and just be like, okay, begin, and then you just start killing stuff as it shows up. So I got some transmog I didn't have before. It's nice to do. So yeah, no, it's a fun thing.
Well, that was Collector's Bounty, which is well over at this point.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Okay, you got to define Winds of, because Mysterious Fortune to me is what tripped me up.
It's the leveling bonanza. It's the 20% baseline, and then you get the satchels with gear and potions in them, and the XP pot. So, yeah, if you're collecting, you can still collect, but no more drop chance bonus as of. I don't know why they didn't run it until patch. That's kind of weird. And then they're running.
It ran until August.
Mysterious Fortune until season. So like I don't know why they didn't just run them both until patch or until the 12th, but yeah, Collector's Bounty is done. Hopefully it comes back. I think they should do it like if not every something patch, like .5 or .7, then they should do it at least like twice a year. It was great, and it got a lot of people excited in there playing the game a lot, even during a lull, and feeling good about the time they put in. So definitely, I expect it to come back. I can't imagine they look at it and go, yeah, we're not doing that again. Like, I think that'll be back. Winds of Mysterious Fortune, I think, is just great to run at the end of every patch cycle, because it gives people a chance to catch up, play a different tune, swap mains, or just level up some extra stuff, because it's just lightning fast to level. Even if, like right now, as we're recording this, you have Time Walking is still up, Winds of Mysterious Fortune is up, and Darkmoon Faire is up. So you can get like, I don't know, what is that, 95% extra XP somewhere in that neighborhood if you stack all that stuff up with Mentor. But even at that, it's like they made the leveling so fast now from 70 to 80, even with just Winds itself and the potions you inevitably get out of the satchels, it's very fast. So it's a great thing to take advantage of. I leveled so many tunes through it this session. When it came in 11.15, I went, it doesn't really sound like that much, whatever. And then I said, well, let me check it out. Somebody told me that it was really good. So I said, let me do one tune. Then I was like, that was really fast. Let me do another tune. And then I kind of ran out of time, and I thought, it's too bad I didn't do more tunes. So this time I did all my tunes all the priority tunes, get each class done. And I'll probably do more Horde tunes the next time it rolls around, because I think this seems to be like an every patch thing, or at least .5s and .7s. So yeah, if you have anything else you want to get leveled up, if you're listening to this live, or if you catch it in time, like, you can really stack up a bunch of bonus XP and just blast those levels out. So it's cool. I love Winds of Mysterious Fortune, and hopefully they just keep bringing it back. Make it the last 3-4 weeks of every patch.
Yeah, it needs a different name, man. Mysterious Fortune, because you're just opening satchels and you get a random potion out of it, is why they went Mysterious Fortune. I don't know. Well,
you get all the armor you get is mysterious. You get mysterious satchels, and then they have mysterious armor, and all the gear is called mysterious whatever.
No, I know. I just feel like they could have done something different than mysterious, because it's not very mysterious. Whatever, it's fine.
Yeah.
The mysterious fortune to me was, hey, crazy drop chance stuff, and because they all overlapped with each other, I just blended them together. But yes, you're right. That ended at beginning of August is when we lost the extra mount stuff, which means I still did all my stuff during that window. It was just unfortunate that mysterious fortune got confused for me. So you're right. Yeah, it's the leveling bonanza. Hopefully, folks are taking advantage of that in this last week that we have going here. Trial of Style is live until Friday, so if you're someone who hasn't dove into that, that's something I mentioned last week was a good thing to occupy your time for the week if you sort of finish off the new stuff that's out there to get into, or you're not as interested into it, because you can always earn those tokens, spend them any time of the year, and get yourself some neat rewards for that. And as you mentioned, Darkmoon Faire is running until next Saturday, so this is also Darkmoon Faire week for those who still want to pick up some knowledge points, maybe get some more Darkmoon Faire tokens towards their dirigible, or they're looking to play with some of the games that are down in there and get your that as you mentioned reputation and experience buff that stacks up with everything else. So certainly an attractive week for that. Okay, Ghosts of Koresh content update notes. This is something we've covered a couple of times, so I'm not gonna dive deep into the content notes that they threw here. But it's just there's a new zone. It's Koresh. You're going to go there. There's going to be these ecological succession kind of system, orbs you go to, and you support these ecological areas by doing some. They call it ecological succession, and so basically you're helping bring these life back to these ecodomes that exist. If you remember back in Netherstorm, they had these big domes everywhere. It's the same kind of concept, these ecodomes, and they all have different kind of creatures and vegetation and whatnot in them, and you're sort of helping that happen. That's happening there in Koresh. There's also the new dungeon, which is based off an ecodome, so it's Ecodome Aldani. You'll be going in there and checking out that new dungeon this week. That'll be something you can do on Mythic Zero, so that'll be exciting for folks who want to get into that. There's going to be a new story, which is all kicking off this week, which is going to be big and exciting. We have the Reshiwraps, which is, you harnessing the power of the ethereals. With the Reshiwraps, it's a cloak that you're going to wear, and so that means if you're someone who currently has a crafted cloak with a particular enhancement on that crafted cloak, you are going to want to move that crafted item around and have your enhancement somewhere else, because you're going to have a Reshiwrap that you're throwing on in that place and not taking off for the rest of the expansion. So just keep that in mind, that when you're looking at spending your sparks for the week to upgrade a craftable and whatnot, you may want to move where that enhancement is over to a different slot and not have your cloak be the piece that has that on it anymore with these Reshiwraps kicking off. They're going to upgrade and scale with you, and there's going to be new visuals as you progress through content. So I'm excited to see what this thing ends up looking like in all of its forms and what kind of transmog you can make around it, because I think it look really neat. You can always just turn your cloak off too if you don't want anyone seeing it, because it's everyone wears it, and so everyone has the same cloak on. You don't want to be like everyone else. Totally get that. You can transmog that or hide it, whatever it is you're looking to do. There'll be new delves and some updates to delves for people to check out. So if you're someone who is a delver and enjoys doing delves, that is also something that you can dive into. The new dungeon pool is going to kick off. Yeah, it does kick off this week. These are all accessible this week with Mythic Zero, so you'll get access to Arakara, Dawnbreaker, Ecodome Aldani, Halls of Atonement, Operation Floodgate, Priory of the Sacred Flame, Tazavesh the Veiled Market, Soleil's Gambit, and Tazavesh the Veiled Market, Streets of Wonder. Those will all be Mythic Zeros that you can actually get into and check out. The 12th, though, is when we actually dig into having hard mode for the Mega Dungeon and Mythic Plus kicking off for your Great Vault and all of that. That'll be something that doesn't kick off until the 12th. So this first week is just Mythic Zero versions. All bosses have a chance to drop Hero Track loot during that August 12th week. So if you get in there and start doing Mythic Plus and all that, you can get Hero Track loot out of Mythic Plus. And completing the Mega Dungeon, which also drops Hero Track, will be 30 Gilded Crests for you completing it. So doing the Mega Dungeon every week for folks that are not big on raiding will be a great way to get a bunch of Gilded Crests as well on top of Mythic Plus. And additional weekly rewards are available for players who defeat all the bosses in the Mega Dungeon without anyone in the party dying. So this current week we're moving into, this is Mythic Zero time. This is having a good time and just sort of, checking stuff out, storyline, everything else with these new systems that are coming into place, doing the ecodomes, etc., exploring all the new content, lots to explore. The 12th is when we actually dig into, hey, now you can start doing Mythic Plus. You'll get Champ Track for obviously lower keys. You'll get Hero Track for higher keys in Mythic Plus. When you check out the hard mode dungeon that exists, the mega dungeon, going into that is going to be where you get Hero Track from every single one of those bosses and Gilded Crest at the end, and obviously a reward for no one dying during that. So that is the content lineup for the first couple weeks there. The raid itself doesn't kick off until the 12th as well. So if you want to check out, Raid Finder for the first wing, normal, heroic, and mythic raid, that is kicking off on the 12th as well. So you got to wait on that. That's officially when season 3 begins, which is also when all the PvP season begins. So we're in the off week for this week we're coming into for PvP. So there won't be a large amount of rewards or anything you're getting from PvP. So keep that in mind. And outside of that, that's kind of the overview of, what they put inside their blog for the feature posts. However, there's other things that we got to mention here. We got to mention Rashnor, the world boss. There's a new world boss coming in for folks to actually get in there, kill, get some rewards. I'm hoping they stick to the Undermine version where you're getting Warbound loot once a week. I think that's worked really well. I'm hoping they stick to the same thing with that. I think that'd be really good.
Yeah, we can't go back. We can never go back now. I mean, I know some people had maybe a weird reaction to it because it was different, and they didn't like that they had changed it. And it feels bad that you can't maybe get something every time you kill it, but it's so much better to get one thing a week that you're going to get, and then you can trade it around your account, and you don't have to do the world boss 13 times. The world boss is not fun content, really. It's kind of fun to see huge groups of people descend on this thing and murder it.
It's fun the first 4 or 5 times.
Yeah, but it's not something you want to do all week long. Yeah. So I don't know for sure. I haven't checked on PTR, but I think the season 2 model was great, and that's the way it always should be. So yeah, definitely hoping that they stick with that for season 3 and beyond.
Yeah, agreed. Dungeon waystones are going to be more visibly present during dungeons. That means places where when you release, you will resurrect partway through the dungeon. So that's going to be much more visual. So I'm expecting to see that during our Mythic Zeros and everything else where, as we progress through some of these dungeons we've been in before, some of which we haven't been in before that are brand new, there'll be something a lot more evident of, hey, you've just defeated the boss. That means you've moved forward for where your resurrection will take place if you die. So that hopefully is up and running and working because it's supposed to be. The class sets are in as far as assets go. You can't get them during this first week, but during the new season, obviously we're going to actually kick off. So after the 12th, kick off people getting their actual class sets for them to actually have their tier set bonuses and everything else kicking off. So I'm sure there'll be a lot of talk about that. And then we move into sort of the schedule here. And so for people who are looking at campaign, we're seeing campaign chapters 1 to 3. So you can get 1 to 3 out of the first week, which is the bulk of it. That's 3/4 of the story because it's a 4-chapter story. The 4th chapter comes out on the 12th, obviously tied in with the overall raid that's going to be happening. And you get the War Within epilogue, which sort of says everything you need to know about whether or not we're getting season 4 with new content and everything else. Is, hey, they're doing the epilogue now in season 3 on the 12th of August. So if you get online on the 12th and you clear that normal raid with the quest that you have on you, and you do the epilogue part of that, you've seen the entire story for War Within. There will not be more story beats coming that we're aware of based off of that. There might be some side thing that they choose to do, but nothing along the main storyline. So that gets wrapped up, or at least becomes accessible to be wrapped up on the 12th of August.
I am so glad that they did not do 1 chapter a week for 4 weeks and then an epilogue week later on. Yeah. It would be maybe even better if you could just do it all at once, especially since the season hasn't started. But you know what? I'll take 2 weeks instead of 4 or more. And a lot of times I feel like they would do stuff like an epilogue chapter would come in like a pre-patch or something for the next expansion or whatever, or just like later on at .7, what have you. So I think it's cool. Like we're getting a lot of stuff to do without the season. My plan is to do as much of it as I possibly can before the season starts, if not kind of all of it, right? Like I want to play the stuff and have it be sort of the focal point of my playtime and enjoy it and experience it all, and then be ready to shift into early season mode. So that's kind of what I'm looking toward. Like how much of this stuff can I get into and do and check out this week before most of my playtime starts becoming raid and keys.
Yeah, I think it would be neat if once you completed chapter 3, that then unlocked story mode rating, and then you could do the story mode right away to finish off chapter 4. That might be a neat thing to do, because it doesn't really spoil the raid at all for anyone who's wanting to progress through all the bosses. You've completed the raid on story mode, because the people who tend to raid the actual, like, do normal, heroic, mythic, that kind of stuff, tend to do it because they enjoy the challenge with their friends and defeating the raid content. You don't have to go and do story mode if you don't want to. So I feel, and they wouldn't have to tie like big rewards to it. Obviously, I mean, defeating on heroic gets you, and we've had rewards in the past where you got like either an extra spark, or you got, you know, an extra catalyst charge, things like that, were things that you got for doing a higher tier of difficulty. They wouldn't have to tie any of that to story mode. It just might be neat to give people access to do the whole story in that first week, like you said. And that might be an easy way to do that, is just go, hey, story mode's going to unlock once you've defeated chapter 3, so you can do chapter 4 and then go into do the, you know, final boss kill, get the story mode out of the way, see the epilogue, all of that sort of thing. I get rewarding players for doing raiding content when it comes to story, of like doing normal attached to it. I just feel like you're still having everything be accessible within 2 weeks. That's not like, you know, you're not, and all of that goes out on YouTube. All of the big, you know, cinematics and everything happen on YouTube within the second week. So I don't really feel like you're potentially, you know, saving players from themselves or anything like that by choosing to do that. So I think that might be a good way to do it.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, because you know that stuff's going to be on like Wowhead and what have you, like the instant it's unencrypted in the data. So yeah, just letting players be able to play it is probably good. Like, I guess you could make the argument, well, it's a reward for organized raiders, which, man, we need whatever rewards for organized raiders we could possibly get.
Yeah.
But even among those players, how many people are just going to watch it as soon as it comes through the feed?
Right.
And also, we even talked a couple weeks ago about the massive story beat spoiler that the WoW YouTube just posted a couple weeks ago. They just kind of spoiled, if you will, the big narrative twist for this whole patch. Well, I mean, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of surprises and stuff, but man, they let a big one slip just like on the YouTube just to promote the patch. So I don't know how much of that really ended up working in practice. I think it would be cool if you could just play through the entire story at your pace, including story mode raid, if that's what you want to do, when the patch launches. Like, I don't think there's really, I don't know what kind of value there is in terms of developing the story or unfolding it or whatever in holding that stuff back beyond launch. Maybe they have some data that, you know, if they hold on to it longer, then people stay subbed an extra week or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah, and I mean, subs are purchased in monthly blocks, so you have to think in months. So it doesn't really make sense to stay subbed for an extra week, because that doesn't change anything for them as far as their earnings margin goes. For those who are curious, story mode launches on August 19th, so it launches the week after the raid goes live with, you know, all of the seasonal stuff. And so to me, it's one of those things of like, I think it'd be pretty easy to just move that up to the August 5th week. Let that be the story week. So people who want to dig in, take the story at their own pace, sit through all the cinematics, click on all the dialogue boxes, read everything like that without feeling like they're, okay, we need to move on to the next thing kind of, you know, rush that happens with a seasonal launch. I think that would be a nice time to do all of that, is within that August 5th beat. And then have August 12th be the launch of the raid and everything else. And then they have Raid Finder Wing 2 and 3 on the 19th and 26th, which sort of slows down some of that, oh my God, I have so many things to do in this first week of season, by spreading out those Raid Finder weeks. Because otherwise people would be like, I need to do normal, need to do heroic, we're going to start working on mythic stuff, I got to do all of the LFRs, I got to do the world boss, I got to do, like, all that stuff is on the list. Whereas I get saving players from themselves by pushing LFR weeks back. That makes sense to me. But if you're going to have story mode in the game, I feel like you might as well throw it during the first week, so that people can take in the whole story during that week, if that's the week they want to take in the playtime for. Because you're not gaining more subs by pushing it to the 19th. Like that, there's that, how rare is it that people like have their WoW sub refreshing on the 16th or something like that, and they're like, I got to stay for another month so I can get the story mode quest. Like, that's not something that I think really sits there. So
yeah, I don't know. I mean, they used to do 2 weeks between LFR wings. Remember
they used
that?
To, yeah.
Like,
yeah.
They did that for years, and it's like, okay, I don't know. I don't know who that really serves other than to just drag the content out so you can say, okay, well, actually, there's still new stuff coming out, routinely until this point in time. Maybe part of the increased patch schedule is part of the reason why they said, you know what, we don't need to do that anymore. We can condense the Raid Finder weeks down. So, which kind of makes sense. I feel like you don't want the whole Raid Finder thing open at the beginning because people are going to use it to farm like trinkets and stuff that they don't really want to be doing LFR, and they might get them out of the higher difficulties anyway.
Yeah.
A lot of the LFR traffic is people who raid on higher difficulties fishing for whatever, a trinket, a weapon, some kind of cantrip item. So
tier sets early on. Yeah.
Yeah, and like there's these boots in the new raid that people are going to want because they buff your cloak proc rate. You don't want to necessarily just fill up the queues with people who don't want to be there. They're not there to do LFR. They're there just to fish for this item that they don't even really want. They want a better version of it, but they want to get the baseline and go. I think it kind of makes sense to still stagger the releases, and also even for people who LFR is their main thing, it's like, well, that's a lot. If all 4 wings, or in this case we only have 3 wings. It's a lot of sitting around in queues waiting for stuff to pop, probably re-killing bosses because a group's falling apart and reforming. So spreading it out a little bit probably still makes sense. But yeah, doing the 2-week separation thing, that seemed excessive back when that was the standard.
Yeah, I remember, and this is why I hope those boots are placed. I actually haven't checked how far into the raid they are. I hope they're placed farther into the raid, because that was a big problem we had. It might have been Shadowlands, where it might have actually been Dragonflight, where people were queuing into raids, like queuing up for normals, getting in, killing the first 2 or 3 bosses, and then bailing, because that's where the one specific item they wanted was. And so you had a lot of groups that, like, you'd have more than half of the raid leave because those sought after items were early in either the dungeon for Mythic Plus, not Mythic Plus, for Mythic Zero stuff, or early in the raid for normals and heroics and whatnot. People jumping in and jumping out as soon as they got the boss they wanted early on. So yes, you gotta watch that stuff when you put in items like that. Okay, we're gonna start tackling some of this class stuff that happened, because like it is massive what's changed since the last time we spoke. Like, last week's episode was a fairly short and brief episode because we didn't know any of this was coming. Like, we knew the patch was coming. We didn't expect them to do this much class stuff as far as what they're doing in that final week, which I think has sort of ticked off some players, I think, to a certain degree. I think some people are very surprised that a lot of these changes came in so late. So first and foremost, something we already mentioned, they're going to be adjusting healing cooldowns to strengthen them in smaller group play, so that those sort of like large benefit to 5-player content, and then medium benefit for 6 to 19 players, no change at 20 players, and a nerf actually beyond 20 players to a lot of these large healing cooldowns like Tranquility and things like that. So just keep that in mind. They've also adjusted some Outlier, Liberation of Undermine tier set bonuses. This is what we're going to be moving into this week, that we're providing some compensation where relevant to ensure a smooth transition between the 2 tier sets. So you don't have a situation where you're wearing a tier set from last tier because the bonuses are just so strong that you don't want to put on the new stuff, right? So that's also coming in this week, so keep that in mind. Okay, specifically to classes. Now, Jason, you've highlighted the Death Knight changes, so I'll let you take the Death Knight changes, because I know you highlight this in particular.
Yeah, I mean, so we're obviously not going to get into every line item change for every class, but just to give the audience a broad idea of like what is happening across, it's kind of the design intent for these. And Death Knight is looking a lot different, in especially in terms of the DPS specs. The class is being heavily reworked. So one note that they put in at the top, at the class level, which is kind of unusual. Usually it's confined to a spec or a hero talent these days. But one thing they got into was about Death Knight's raid utility. They want to help give them a better identity that isn't completely reliant on tuning to make an impact in the raid. They have removed Abomination Limb. It's because they say its existence made it incredibly hard for grip to matter in any real capacity because of how potent and easily accessible it became. This led to many raid mobs being immune to grip as a way to counter what should normally be one of Death Knight's most powerful tools.
Yeah.
This change limits the number of death grips available to a raid at any moment and allows us to design more moments for death grip to be tactical and powerful when Death Knights choose to use it. This change should be immediately apparent in the new raid Manaforge Omega. They also say plenty of time has passed since Castle Nathria. Yes, it has. It's given us time to reflect on our change to capping anti-magic zone. So they're returning AMZ to a % magic damage reduction effect with no cap. They've increased the cooldown and reduced the duration and effectiveness downward from what it was prior to the Castle Nathria nerf, which should better align with their expected output for a non-healer damage reduction cooldown. And they hope that by adding that back as a meaningful cooldown alongside grips, that Death Knight will be able to carve out a spot for themselves in raid comps. This makes sense, although I've seen some spreadsheets from people that say there's nothing you can grip in Manaforge Omega anyway.
Right.
So,
yeah.
I again, this is the inflection point where like class and encounter design need to align, and I think it's a good idea. Like what they're saying here philosophically, it sounds good to me, I guess. And I'll tell you what, for a group that I have like one DK main, and if he isn't available, then I have no grips anyway. So having, then there've been fights recently as like Farrak, I guess, where you could really tell the difference between having and not having one. In this expansion, not as much, but I mean, considering grip to be raid utility that's a little debatable, I think. I mean, it can be. It kind of depends.
There have definitely been encounters where it was like from a Mythic Raider perspective, there are encounters where you needed grip. Like that was a thing that you needed to have. Yeah.
I think like when people think of utility, I think they don't think about stuff like that. It's just not. It's a weird. What's such a unique ability that's the problem is like, it's tough to find a niche for it where it actually can be effective without being required. I like the AMZ change. AMZ has been in a bit of a weird spot. Like it should be good if. I mean, it's been useful for sure, but if it can have maybe a bit more power where it's like, okay, you drop this and then everybody is taking predictably less magic damage inside of it for its duration, then that's really good. Especially when you're, progging or whatever, and you don't want that. You don't want to hit that cap. So that's kind of the overall class stuff for Death Knight. They're reworking Frost pretty heavily. And what they say is they're revisiting the core building blocks of Frost Death Knight. They want to reduce friction between how the spec uses its resources and to focus its power into more iconic abilities, alongside some new ones we hope you'll enjoy, they say. So,
right.
Big, massive Frost rework. It's like several pages of my notes document is how many line item changes there are to Frost. Unholy also getting quite a few changes, and they say what they want to do is reduce the number of cooldowns Unholy has and provide new tools to both apply and remove festering wounds and AoE more efficiently, with their goal being to speed up the ramp at the beginning of Mythic Plus dungeons. So, that's what Unholy wants to do, so hopefully making it a bit more streamlined or feeling a bit better to do. Again, a lot of changes to Unholy DK, so if you play a DPS spec for Death Knight, you pretty much have a new spec to play on Tuesday. Just a lot of changes, a lot of new stuff, a lot of stuff being moved around, stuff being removed. So you will definitely want to consult some resources, try some different stuff out. You will log in and your talent tree for your spec will not have all the points in it. So, you'll have to do a little bit of homework and get your spec rebuilt for sure. I mean, my DK main buddy that I've been playing with for a long time, he's excited about the Frost changes overall in terms of play style, but he's concerned because in addition to this, they've just been tuning it down. Like they make all of these changes and then they kind of just tune the damage aura down. But tuning is a weird thing to be. For me, it's impossible to even contextualize the tuning of anything right now. We don't know the content. We don't know how anything feels. We don't know how anything feels in relation to each other. So that's a conversation for a different day. I think, the big thing is Where do these changes land in terms of feel? How fun is this to play?
Yeah, because my brain when I hear grip and changes to grip very much go to like Oven Axe, Silken Court, even Styx inside this particular raid tier, all very much use grip in a really big way. Styx a little bit less so than Oven Axe and Silken Court, but like they were critical in those fights, especially if type A-bomb limb pulling in all of those little adds to be able to deal with it. Like it's an interesting change. I think I'll be curious to see how it plays out. Obviously, for this current raid tier, if a lot of people are saying like, yeah, there just aren't bosses that use grip, then you've changed something utility wise that sure will be affect Mythic Plus in that scene, but won't necessarily affect what we're looking at when it comes to raid. So yeah, we'll have to see how all that plays out. Okay. As far as Druid stuff goes, we already covered the majority of what was happening. I know there's some Wildstalker changes that came in a little bit later on where they felt they overdid a little bit of this and they backed it off a bit. But in general, I'm looking to see how well it plays and what that feels like coming into this next patch. The biggest thing for me, I think, were the Lycara's meditation changes that came in that just dramatically changed what that ability did. Which I think was a pretty big deal because it used to be like you got haste for this and you got like different actual bonuses. Now it's like magic damage, movement speed, stamina, and avoidance. So nice, but not nearly as potent as it used to be. So those were pretty big changes. How Wildstalker healing changes in general is big. They've been doing buffs and nerfs to damage left, right, and center across the class. In general, though, it looks like everything's kind of got a bump up. They made it so that Tranquility's healing is increased by 100%, but now reduces rapidly beyond 5 targets, which is also going to be very weird because Tranquility already felt like a very weak cooldown. So if you're inside a raid setting and now like it just isn't very effective, that's kind of crap. That sucks. They did increase the healing over time by 200%, but it reduced beyond 5 targets. So again, you're like, okay, you give me big raid cooldown button, but me hitting it doesn't actually help the raid that much, right? So like I need to feel like when I press Tranquility, sort of like the big iconic spell for a Resto Druid, like I'm watching all of the health bars in the raid chunk upwards during a persistent damage moment that's happening. Muggsy is a great example of that, where there's these large persistent damage with multiple mines going off in a row, or when he's doing sort of his pulsing damage that he does a couple of times throughout the fight that lasts like 6 or 7 seconds. Those are great moments to hit Tranquility and watch it kind of negate that effect and feel like you've actually done something good with this button. So if it doesn't feel like that anymore, then I think you're doing a really big disservice to the spec itself by choosing to do that. So we'll have to see what that feels like. If it still feels that way, but then feels even stronger inside 5-player content, then that's great. Because I also say I very rarely press it inside 5-player content, because the majority of the time that I'm doing that dungeon style content, me locking my character to the floor is even worse than it is inside raid. Typically in raid, like I can find some moment to sort of do that, or I can have someone throw like a spell barrier on me or something like that to sort of allow me to do it, and we can plan that out, because it sucks that you can't move while casting Trank. It just does. But inside a dungeon content, finding those 5 seconds can be even harder in those moments when that kind of intense damage is happening. And the biggest flaw to Tranquility that exists in the spell at all is that you can't do targeted healing while you're channeling Tranquility, which means a lot of the time, if you won't prepare for it properly as a Resto Druid, you will die while channeling Tranquility because you can't heal yourself while you're doing it. You're healing yourself with Tranquility, but if it's not doing this big kind of chunky healing, you will die and everyone else will live, because they're able to still move their character and dodge things and do things they need to do, and you can't. So I do think that I'll be curious to see what this feels like once we get into it. It's really hard to judge stuff based off of like 100% increase this or 12% increase that. Like it's hard to sort of judge that without feeling it in the current content we're in, because we already know, we're going to get to it later on. They're talking about, well, we think player damage is just like players are just taking too much damage in our current content, so we're going to nerf all of our content damage is one of the things they're doing, which we'll talk about in a bit about dungeon content, because players are just taking too much damage. And you're like, okay, well, if that's the case, this could be really dangerous. So we'll have to see how that plays out.
Yeah, you better hope you're one of the 5 targets if you're damaged during Tranquility. Yeah, I think part of what occurs to me is like, are they trying to tamp down on people, groups under healing raid content, right? Because what they say, in general, what their goals are is for these changes to healing cooldowns to be, buffs for smaller groups, unchanged at 20, and nerfs for bigger than 20. And so, that kind of leads me to believe the idea here is, well, you want to make sure that you have a healer covering every 5 people. Which is sort of the baseline that I think I tend to use anyway when I'm constructing a group, because I like to run with 25 or 30 people if I can. So I want to bring 6 healers to a 30-player group, but traditionally that has meant several healers grumbling about being bored because there's nothing to heal. So maybe this sort of locks in the group dynamic a bit more if they can get the tuning right, which I don't know if that's a bad thing overall necessarily, but it is a shift. And also, like you kind of alluded to, like it really depends on encounter design, right?
Yeah.
Like we need to be in fights where these things don't feel bad. You need to know that, like, okay, this cooldown is going to cover this boss ability, or like this moment in the fight when the raid's going to be taking damage, and then we can cycle somebody else's cooldown in for the next thing, and it's going to work. And that, it's not going to throw off kind of the rhythm of combat that we've become accustomed to recently. So
Right.
It's kind of a big change for end of expansion. This is more kind of the thing I feel like traditionally they've done at the outset of an expansion and then sort of dialed it in more. So, but yeah, it's so hard to wrap your head around balance right now. All of this stuff is sort of imaginary because we're not in there playing it. We don't know how it feels. We don't know what we're playing against or what that feels like. So it's tough to try to picture it in the context of where we've been before. And that's what I'm sort of getting hung up on. But the thing, like I said, the thing for me about the overall changes to the philosophy around healer cooldowns is we want you to bring more healers to raid.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because it depends on the counter design is just such a large factor in that. So like we still 4-healed the last 2 bosses of Undermine, but we 2-heal Carnival of Carnage, and we 2-heal, a few of the other bosses that were in there, and really the ratio went from between 1 healer per 5 players to 1 healer per 10 players, and somewhere in the middle of that, depending on the encounters that we were doing for that raid. Now, mind you, we weren't doing 2 healing those bosses while we were progressing them. We were certainly 3 or 4 healing them when we were progressing them. But it just became one of those things where, as we got better, the bosses were dying faster, people could use their cooldowns a little more liberally, etc. It made sense to change that. So I think if progression-wise their target is 1 healer per 5 players, I think that is actually a good ratio for a raid group composition, because it means that your healers are seeing enough time in the raid on a regular basis. You should even have some encounters where you want 5 healers, in my opinion, for some of those situations. So we'll have to see how it feels, as you said. There's also updates happening to the visual effects for Efflorescence, Life Bloom, Regrowth, Rejuve, Swift Mend, Tranquility, and WoW Growth. So I'm excited to see what that looks like. I haven't WoW-headed them to try and figure it out. I just want to log in and experience it, so I will when we actually get in there, and I think that'll be a neat thing to check out as well. Okay. Evokers are, if you are playing an Evoker, you want to check again what happened to your class, because they went in, they buffed your preservation spec, they did a bunch of buffs to Flame Shaper, they did a bunch of buffs to Og again. Og seeing another 5% damage increase across the board. Breath of Eon's tooltip has been rewritten for more clarity and brevity, which I think is great because it's a critical piece of that class. So I certainly think that's a great one to add in there. But yeah, there's more changes that happened, like Devastation seeing a all damage increase by 6%, Pyre damage increased by 20%, Firestorm damage increased by 20%. Like Devastation is going to be a powerhouse again in AoE. We're going to see that happening. Og, I think, will still sit on the sidelines potentially. The only thing they'll pull Og off the sidelines is if we see an Og in Race to World First. If when Race to World First starts happening, someone is demonstrating that Og is, essentially doing what it used to do, then people will start paying attention to it a lot more. But I just don't see that happening. I see them bringing either a Devastation or a Preservation, most likely a Devastation, based off the changes that we're seeing here, to that sort of thing. Because they reduce the healing for the main part of Preservation, and then they buff the healing for specific spells to sort of help balance for that nerf. It's an interesting thing. They put a little philosophy note in here about stasis, as well as one in here for temporal anomaly, which, you know, I think if you're someone who's playing a Preservation Evoker, get in there, have a read, see what they're choosing to say about your class. Okay, hunters have been up and down and up and down and all over the place when it comes to this sort of patch note stuff. So I think this is going to be, if you're not someone who's Mythic rating, because if you are Mythic rating, you probably already know all the changes that are coming in for your class for hunters. This is going to be a feel. What feels better for you to get into? They're really trying to strive to find a balance between marksman, beast mastery, you know, and sort of making sure that those feel good. And they're really trying to make Dark Ranger into a tree that you are choosing more often. So I'm curious to see what people feel about what's happening with Hunter, because I feel like if you were someone who was playing, you know, Beast Mastery or Marksman as a ranged hunter, then you were really bouncing back and forth between them for some of these nerfs that were happening. And, you know, now Survival itself getting some other buffs that came in here, but I still don't feel like, I just genuinely don't feel like melee hunter is a thing that a lot of raid teams can afford to bring in. I just don't. That's just my personal opinion. If you're someone who loves playing Survival, that's great. It can be a very strong spec. It just feels weird to go, yes, this is one of the most powerful range classes in the game that can do damage while moving and avoiding mechanics. Let's put them in melee and get one of the melee out of this raid because we can't have too many of them. That feels very strange to do. So, yeah.
It's been a long time now, right? That came in Legion, didn't it? When they moved Survival to a melee spec, because you get the spear and everything as the artifact weapon. So that's been 9 years. I just don't feel like it's ever really found a niche. Like, there are times where it's very powerful in the meta, and so it becomes sort of a flavor of the month. But like, fundamentally, people who like approach the game from the standpoint of, I want to play a thing that's cool, or like I want to embody a particular fantasy, like Survival Hunter just never lands with them. I like the hunter mains I know, or the people that like are really serious hunter players, never switched to Survival once it became melee. It just became a two spec class because of what you were saying. Like, they're used to sort of being this ranged quarterback because they can do all these, you know, they can handle mechanics because they can, you know, move more. They have much more mobility, especially Beastmaster, when they're, you know, out in the field doing stuff. They can go click on a thing or move something around or whatever. That's stuff that Survival doesn't really bring. And it seems like overall a lot of elements of the class are more designed around that ranged play. So it's weird that it's just stayed like that forever, and I feel like it's only had its moments when it's kind of OP, and then people want to play it in keys or whatever because it's like easy invites if you're playing Survival. I haven't really played the spec, to be honest, and I'm not trying to impugn it in any way. I'm just saying that hunter mains don't seem to have ever bought into this idea. So that's kind of strange. And yeah, it seems like Dark Ranger has also been a thing that has never really landed to people's satisfaction. So I'm not surprised to see another big round of reworks to that. I mean, Hunter's getting I would say Hunter's one of the classes that's getting, you know, some of the heavier load of changes in overall in these notes. And there's this is a lot of class changes. It almost feels like, in a way, it's sort of catching up. It's like paying off some debt from earlier in this expansion. I feel like in Dragonflight, there was a much steadier cadence of spec reworks and tuning changes and stuff.
Right.
Granted, that was the big overhaul of class and spec trees, so kind of to be expected. But we were getting big reworks like every patch for certain specs. I feel like that dropped off a bit in War Within, and then they went, oh, we have some real class work to do. We got to get it in before the end of the expansion. And so I think that's a lot of what we're seeing here in 11.2.
Yeah, which is part of why I just say, like, for a lot of these classes, Mage being another one, go and read the notes if you're someone who really cares about, hey, how effective is, you know, my spec that I'm currently playing going to be, because there's a lot of notes. Like, the list of changes alone just to fire spec is like 12 notes long. They involve lots of damage buffs that are happening there. But then you look at Frost and you're like, yep, there's reworks happening to like Blizzard and, you know, its cooldown duration and etc. There's a lot of things changing for these classes that I think it's important for people to go and check out for themselves if that's something that they care about. Otherwise, it'll be, you know, wait for the flavor of the month to appear, choose to try that out, see how it feels, or play the spec that you feel is iconic to your mage that you've made, and just find what's working for you as far as what you're having fun doing, right? What buttons feel good, and press those buttons, because that's part of it. Or do what Jason was talking about earlier. Throw on that one button rotation, see what that looks like and what that feels like, and if that feels good, depending on what your play style is for some of that lower end content you might be engaging in and enjoying. And by lower end, I just mean not mythic stuff and heroic stuff, because that's not what that was made for. All right, monks, man. Our monk is down bad. He feels he's a windwalker, and he feels like he is just struggling to enjoy the class at the moment. So it's interesting, because the only note we saw for Windwalker was that all of its damage was increased by 13%, which is a pretty great note. Like, who would not be thrilled about that? But I think there was other things he was looking to have changed. So if you're someone who's like, man, I really wish that they do XYZ with Windwalker, you're not the only one out there feeling it. I know other people who are feeling that way. But as far as Mistweaver goes, they are buffing revival healing by 100%, but now it reduced beyond 5 targets, which I'm really curious to see, because revival used to be the button you'd press when the raid was low, and suddenly the entire raid would be max health. Like, every time, it was like a lay on hands for the entire raid. It was wild how strong that was. And so if it's no longer that, if they hit that and everyone's health goes up by 15% inside a 20-person raid, that's not going to feel very good. I'm just saying, that's going to feel like a nothing burger kind of thing you're hitting. And in general, that might be something where you're pressing it more often to remove debuffs than you are for the healing effect on it, as far as that goes. So I don't know where these balance changes are happening. They say there's no change at 20 players, but does the no change mean there's no change between season 2 and season 3? Because if it does, and all of our health pools increase by several million hit points, it might be a situation like that, right? Because we're all going to jump like 40 to 50 to 60 item levels, and so all of our health is going to dramatically increase. And if there's no change in its healing between those two, then I don't know. So we'll see how it feels. Again, I think that's really important. But the healing changes are kind of a spicy one to look at right now on as far as numbers go, but feel is going to be really important. Vivify direct healing increased by 80%, but is no longer increased in PvP. Chi Harmony now increases healing by 25%, was 50, so some nerf there. All healing done increased by 5%, so they did raise that up a bit across the board, as well as Shaylun's gift healing was increased by 20%. So Mistweaver's getting some buffs, although that change to revival, we don't know what that's going to feel like. So we'll have to see. How's Brewmaster looking, Jason?
So Brewmaster, I feel like, has been in a bit of a weird spot most of this expansion. I think it's really fun to play, but I don't think it feels particularly powerful. And also, Brewmaster is generally just a weird tank spec to play. You have to kind of like turn your brain off, or sort of ignore your impulses of like how you want to approach tanking a thing. It's the complete opposite of Prot Warrior, basically. And so also, like, your healers need to know sort of how to heal a Brewmaster.
The cadence of the healing, yeah.
Yeah, it's just different. It's very different. And I feel like I haven't I don't know if it's really kind of reached its potential in this expansion. Let me
hop in here real quick, because I want to mention the healing thing. So, I mean, first and foremost, a great example of this is Muggsy. If you have a Brewmaster in the raid, some of those hits that other tanks will take from Muggsy are like huge amounts of their health total, like 3/4 of their health in one punch kind of thing. A Brewmaster will just take that hit and their health won't really move. But something you have to do which feels really good, I have to say, it looks really neat. But something you have to track as a healer for a Brewmaster is where their stagger is at. Because, and this I learned back in early Shadowlands. I was tanking with a guy, I was healing with a guy who tanked as a Brewmaster primarily. And I started using weak auras, and eventually some of the grid add-ons and whatnot out there started having this in there, but to signify a color based off their stagger, because their stagger debuff evolves into it changes what debuff it is based off how much damage they're shrugging off, if you will, when it comes to this sort of thing. And so what you have to consider with Brewmaster is there's like their health pool, and then there's like a damage taken tank. sort of like that they're filling up. And so every time they get hit, that damage taken tank kind of slowly fills higher and higher and higher. And the color scheme is green, yellow, red, magenta. If you ever hit magenta, it means that they're going to be taking like 3/4 of their health every tick of stagger that they have. It's basically building a debuff on their character. So if you're someone who's healing and you see them go, into red, you need to be paying attention to them, like on a big level when it comes to what's happening. Because yes, they'll be doing a lot of self-healing, but they'll be taking not only the melee hits that a boss is hitting at a reduced amount, because some of that's adding to their stagger, but their stagger itself is going to be ticking on them as a debuff during that whole time as well. So that's where, like, if I saw it go magenta, it was like immediate pain sup on that, or iron bark or whatever it is onto that brewmaster to make sure that they would live. They had additional damage reduction to live through that debuff. Now there's skills that brewmasters have to shrug off all of it. They just clear their stagger pool, basically, is something they can do. And so they have to be sure that they're lining those particular times up, like any cooldown during a boss encounter, to shrug off when that damage is going to be high. Pardon me. So that's something that just pay attention to as a healer. It's neat if you can track stagger. It's a big deal.
Yeah, and it's really important for the brewmaster not to end up magenta. You want to manage stuff, but sometimes, obviously, especially prog and all that, you take a lot of damage. But I think one thing I've kind of noticed playing brewmaster, just the stuff I've been doing, which is delves, 11s on delves and like heroic raid when it's in deep farm. It just doesn't feel like my brewmaster has any real impact offensively. It doesn't feel like very rewarding when I'm attacking stuff necessarily. That's just my personal experience with it.
Yeah, you're just a sponge.
Yeah, pretty much.
You're not a spiky sponge. You're just a sponge.
Right. Yeah. What they say is they want to provide new options for smoothing out and stabilizing both damage intake and healing, and they've made some adjustments to Invoke Neozal with the intent of making Neozal more consistently present and impactful, as well as improving its integration with the rest of Brewmaster gameplay. And so, they added some new talents that I think will help out Brewmaster, especially people like trying to learn how to play Brewmaster, or like I've been messing around with Brewmaster for 8 years or so, and I would say I'm still kind of a novice. Like I don't feel very confident at it at all, but they're adding some new talents that should help with kind of smoothing out, like learning how to deal with stagger and how to maintain like a manageable level of stagger. Just ways to kind of utilize your self heal to keep yourself safer, or like help your healer out with that kind of trickle heal that you need when you're playing Brewmaster properly. I don't know how I feel about the invoked Neozal stuff. Like Neozal obviously is the August Celestial, the Ox, that's like sort of the the patron of the Brewmasters or whatever. Cool character. I've always felt like invoked Neozal and like summoning the Ox and all that is a little wonky, and it just feels weird. Like it's a thing that it's monk centric, right? We think of like Chi-Ji or whatever for Mistweavers, and it's kind of the same idea, but I don't know. For me, this is not the thing that I feel like is going to make it feel more impactful offensively and everything like that, because you don't really have a feel for what Neozal's doing. He's out there and doing stuff, and I mean, they're trying to, they're trying to incorporate more stomps and everything. You can get him to stomp enemies in AoE and everything. That's cool, but I'll have to play with it. Like I said, I haven't played very much PTR at all, and I definitely haven't played Monk on PTR whatsoever. So I'm interested to check it out. I will be playing a lot of Brewmaster, at least in the little ways that I play it in Season 3. And so I will have to, check this out and see how it feels, and just get used to, trying to use Neozal more, I guess. Like I make sure that, I'll try, whatever, if the recommended builds, especially for delves, involve it, then I'll check it out and see how it feels and try to get into it. I don't know. It's like what I really want is just for Keg Smash to feel awesome. Like that's the cool button. And I don't feel like it feels super great all the time. Like you have to hit it, obviously. It's a good button to hit, but when I think about like my visceral reaction,
man. It should feel like Shield Slam.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Like Shield Slam feels great.
Yeah.
Avengers Shield feels great.
Yeah.
Keg Smash should be at that. It should feel that way to me as the player, and it just doesn't. And I don't think that like summoning a celestial pet to come out and stomp things is what's going to feel awesome to me. But I haven't played it, so I can't make any kind of judgment. It's not the direction I would expect them to go in, is to go, okay, we need more Neozao stuff in this kit. But we'll check it out. We'll see in a couple days, and I'll probably get in there, first week, because I'll probably play through everything on the warrior and then start getting the monk going a little bit. Go get the cloak and all that. So I'll check it out.
What if the summoning celestial pet is basically them taking full moon but making it Neozao that drops from the sky and slams into the thing?
It would be cool if like an ox just falls on the stuff you're fighting. Yes. Yeah, that would be cool. I would like that.
Yes. Okay, Discipline Priests. They're doing a change here that I think is long overdue. I know a lot of Discipline Priests are probably not a huge fan of this, but they're doing some target adjustments to just some of Discipline Priest's direct healing spells so that their mana gradually reduces over time if they're spending a lot of time applying Atonement. So they want Discipline to be able to regenerate mana slowly over time using damage spells, and this is going to help them essentially balance out against other healers who spend more mana than they do. It's very weird being the Resto Druid in a raid. Our Discipline Priest can burn through mana and does burn through mana, does occasionally call for Innervates, that sort of thing from our Boomkin. So there is mana stuff there happening. It's just substantially reduced. Same thing with Holy Priest. They do eventually work through mana. I feel like a bottomless pit as Resto Druid, I have to say. They're like, here's a great example. Mugsy's a fight where at one point when there is large AoE raid damage happening, I had to consistently just sit there and channel Wraths to generate enough mana to be set up enough to deal with intermission into the last phase. And that feels very weird to do, to be like, yeah, this is essentially my time where I would sit and drink a 10-second mana pot, while everyone else sort of covered the healing and I regenerate up some mana to be ready for that. But it felt weird to be the only healer who really had to do that. That felt pretty strange, right? As a healing class, to be like, hey, there's times in fights where I just need to be like not just weaving in Wraths, but actually like channeling Wrath for 10 to 15 to 20 seconds just to get a bunch of mana back to make sure I'm prepped for this next part of the fight. And that's with Innervates on myself. That's with, mana pots being spent. That's with Mugsy was a fight where I was drinking a mana pot and using Innervate in the first 15 to 20 seconds of that fight. Because the fight starts with AoE damage and then goes directly into mines. So you can burn through a lot of mana really fast, and you use your cooldowns really fast on that fight too. You go into a Convoke very early, you do a Tranquility very early to sort of like put those things on cooldown and cover a lot of that early healing that's needed when we have that much intense damage happening early on. It's also where people tend to make the most mistakes because they're the least focused, because all their cooldowns and fancy lights are binging off, so they're able to sort of like tunnel a little bit more, and they might stand in a mine when a mine's spawning or something like that. And you have those surprise amounts of damage. So it's good to plan for those things there as well. So yeah, it'll be nice to see them looking at, okay, first of all, they're clearly leaning into, hey, we want healers to cast damage spells as part of their rotation. We don't want them just healing, because they're doing it to Discipline. They already did it to Resto Druid. They're doing it to other classes too. So my I guess plan is that I will be looking at these encounters and determining where those moments are where I didn't need to just be like, yeah, I need to cast 7 Wraths here or 8 Wraths here to gain a bunch of mana back so that I can then be prepped for the rest of the fight. I want to be above 50 or 60% mana at this point of the fight, so I need to be sure that I accomplish that regardless of where I'm at, and let the other healers sort of carry that weight, which is what a good healing team does during those parts of the fight. So we'll see how this goes. For Discipline Priests, it could be a big negative. It might be something they barely notice, but I think it'll be an important thing to look at what they're choosing to do with some of these healing ideas that they've got going on. Okay. Do you want to talk a bit about Shadow Priest? Because there's a whole whack ton of dev notes here to actually cover.
I know it feels like there's a lot of classes getting reworked or specs getting reworked, and you might be thinking like there can't possibly be more. But yeah, Shadow is also getting a pretty big rework. And they posted a massive dev note about philosophy around Shadow and sort of the direction they wanted to go in. And what they're saying is, a goal is to update the less impactful or interesting talents in the last 3 rows of the tree. They have these idols as capstones, but they say they've heard from the community that some of their effects feel lacking. They've also added a new ability that can be used after Void Torrent called Void Volley, which they think will be an exciting rotational and visual addition to the spec. And they're making adjustments to Shadow Crash to give it more flexibility and the option to significantly increase its damage. It comes with a reduction in the number of targets Vampiric Touch is applied to from 8 to 6, but they feel it's a necessary change to ensure damage at lower target counts remains competitive. And so they also talk a bit about Mind Flay, Mind Spike. They feel like the balance is in a good place, but they want to recenter the spec on its core iconic fantasy, and that's Mind Flay. They say that's the obvious choice for them to keep in the long term, so they're removing Mind Spike. They're keeping Mind Melt with some minor adjustments to support gameplay for Mind Flay, and providing option to choose between increasing damage of Mind Flay and using it to increase Mind Blast damage. And they think that it'll support each hero talent tree in meaningfully different ways. So that's kind of the goal there. They're also making a simplification change to Death Speaker with the aim of reducing the potential number of competing priorities the spec has. We're looking to create more breathing room and clarity in the rotation while still impacting how often you use Shadow or Death in the rotation. And they say they're also bringing back a previous class set we thought had fun interactions as a follow-up node to Death Speaker. I don't actually, off the top of my head, know Shadow Priest set bonuses from the past. So I have played a little Shadow Priest this patch because I leveled that way. But yeah, I mean, just I feel like with Shadow Priest, it seems like they've had kind of an identity crisis over the years. They kind of never know what they want to do with it, or sort of these styles emerge that almost seem like not what the devs want people doing. So maybe this kind of falls into that category, but a lot of reworks to Shadow Priest. So we'll see. I think Shadow Priest is actually a really cool caster to play, even though I've never played it in any kind of actual content. But I think the overall vibe of it is really cool. And
well, I know that our Shadow Priests are very excited about this. I know they're
that's
pumped.
cool. Yeah, I'm glad. I think it's a cool spec, and I'd like to see it do well, and for Shadow Priest players to enjoy it. I mean, I think what they're saying about where they want to go and sort of Mind Flay being sort of that iconic, right, Shadow Priest ability, to me that makes sense. Like, you may not love the channeled spell thing as a player, but some players probably really like that or have played around that for a long time. And I think putting that more back front and center makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, Mind Flay used to be, when I think of Shadow Priest, I think of Burning Crusade, mana batteries, where their entire goal was just to generate mana for the rest of the casters. And the majority of their rotation was just dotting something up and then just channeling Mind Flay over and over and over again. And that was what they did. So like it is an iconic spell for them that has been around for a long time. So yeah, I'm excited to hear that people are excited to play Shadow Priest. I think that's good. So I'm glad to hear that. All right, Demonology. They are making it easier to play is sort of the easiest way to say this. But what they really mean is they're lowering some of that difficulty curve to playing the class well and doing the big damage for Demonology. So the first thing they want to address is the tuning to the right side of the talent tree to increase the number of options available. So they really want to be sure that some of those different nodes are tuned out differently so that it really makes people consider changing some things from fight to fight and seeing what's going on there with that part of the talent tree. But second, they say they're making minor changes to Demonic Tyrant's ramp and lowering the requirements for maximizing its throughput. While they want Demonic Tyrant to be an expression of skill for Demonology, we also want maximization of its throughput to be attainable in a variety of different encounters rather than only challenges with lower mobility requirement. So as opposed to being something where you really need to plant and just do the right things in a row to maximize your Tyrant, they want this to be something where, yeah, you can actually do this a little better while moving around, which sounds great. So I'm hoping, for folks who are a fan of Demonology, that is something that they're excited about as well, because that's potentially a good one coming in there too.
Yeah, I mean, I play with a Demo lock pretty consistently, and Tyrant is a big concern about like getting the most out of it, using it in ideal situations, not having your ramp sequence for Tyrant interrupted. So some quality of life adjustments around that is probably good. It just seems like, I mean, Demonology is such a cool spec aesthetically, right? Like you're summoning this army of demons to go forth and do your bidding and destroy your enemies. And Tyrant's sort of like the capper on that. Like once you have your big army up, then you bring out the boss, right? Like, and so, yeah, a lot of potential for feels bad when you can't line one up the way that you want it to. So Yeah, that seems cool. Actually, Warlock, they're not getting as many changes as some other classes, but Demo's getting the most changes among the 3 specs.
Yeah.
So, I think I'm going to guess they heard a lot of feedback of people unhappy with, my Tyrant window is so small and I can't satisfyingly hit it the way that I really want to. And so that may have been, part of the process here.
Yeah. All right. Fury Warriors are finding themselves a little behind on the AoE, which I think is something that I've heard expressed numerous times, actually since season 1. So they're getting some changes. All ability damage for Fury Warriors increased by 5%, Blade Storm damage increased by 15%, Whirlwind damage increased by 10%, and Improve Whirlwind now causes your single target attacks to deal 65% damage to up to 4 targets nearby, as opposed to 55%. So 10% buff on that. So your Fury Warriors should be feeling the punch a little bit better when it comes to this spec.
I hope so. I think it's just weird. Okay, I'm a Warrior main for life, so I'm obviously a little biased. But isn't it weird that Fury Warrior would be struggling to keep up in sustained AoE combat? The Titan's Grip, Whirlwind, Rampage class, that's...
Well, they had amazing spike. I think
they should
AoE.
Be good at that.
Yeah, they were the ones that on Ovanax, I'm just gonna go back to again, would just annihilate some of these ads when they got gripped in and were just being, that blender of melee they were a key part of. Yeah. But if anything that lived longer than 15 seconds and suddenly they just drop down that, all the boomkins suddenly come to the surface because all the boomkins are like, yes, we love things that live longer. Everything can do more damage to them now, as opposed to like, hey, we never get to do any damage because these Fury Warriors just kill everything so fast. So yeah, the sustained was a problem they were having for sure.
Yeah, which is just, I feel like a lot of that could be, whirlwinding and into, the whirlwind buff, then making your other stuff cleave. Like Blade Storm's obviously a super powerful ability, but it's on a long cooldown and you use it and then it's done and there you go. So, we'll see how that goes. Most of my DPS warrior buddies have not been hanging out too much lately, so I expect one of them will be back for sure with season. And so I guess we'll see how that goes. On the prot side, I have nothing else to say other than what I said on previous episodes. Not much has really changed since that initial big rework came down. We're taking spell block out. We're moving the tree around. We want to put some more. We want to give you some more flexibility around the talents that you feel like you have to take and free up some points for you to take what you want. We're also moving power around in between talents. So we're taking talents that maybe do 2 things and making them do 1 thing. There are a bunch of talents right now that also add additional armor, for example. And so they're taking the armor component out of that and adding a new talent that just gives additional armor, just as an example of kind of what I'm talking about. They're also kind of trying to pump up the self-healing from bleeds a bit, which is a direction that, they haven't really gone into much. We'll see how powerful that really ends up being. We're going to be, pretty high item level. So with item level scaling for this expansion content, maybe with they're buffing bleed damage. I think one of the problems is you only heal off of your deep wounds, which is one of potentially 3 bleeds you could have on a target. So that, to me, that just makes it not as attractive, but they're increasing bleed damage and increasing how much you heal off of your deep wounds. So your deep wounds is going to do 25% more damage, and you're getting 40 percentage points on the healing that you do. So maybe with enough targets, that could be a good thing. Self-healing has never really been our bread and butter. And I understand their point that spell block was an awkwardly designed ability, but I feel like maybe you kind of threw the baby out with the bathwater, maybe fixing spell block or figuring out a way to better communicate how best to use it would have been better than totally getting rid of it. There are some really cool new talents in the tree that I'm excited to play around with. I did mess around with the tree a bit on PTR just to see what kind of builds I could put together and what I was picking and choosing between. And I will say I felt like, man, I wish I could get all of this. I had those moments of okay, how do I get this talent to work in a build? And oh, this is really cool. I would love to have this. I guess that's a good thing, right? Like design wise, is you want all of the talents to be attractive or seem like a cool thing to have. And so obviously you can't just learn every talent in your spec tree. So I guess that's like good design, but I'm not sure. There were some things where I felt like I'm not sure that I can get away with not taking this talent so that I can have this other thing. And that could be a problem. But then again, there could also be talents that you kind of grow out of with gear, which is something that maybe we don't really talk about too much. But, you know, you have talents in the prot tree that just give you more baseline armor, like I was just talking about. Well, once you're very high item level in this season's gear, that the diminishing returns on armor kick in so hard that is 6% more armor really that beneficial compared to something that might increase my throughput or give me some other bonus effect or something? Maybe not. You know, there's still a talent that gives you just some baseline haste percentage based on the amount of targets that are near you. That talent quickly becomes irrelevant once you have enough haste rating from gear, and with stat inflation as our item level increases this patch, that would not be a concern, right? So there might be an opportunity to go, okay, well, like theoretically, this sounds like a really good talent to have, but I don't need it in my build. So that's kind of, I guess, the approach I'm going to be taking. Obviously, I'm going to look at Icy Veins. I'll look at the Discord. I'll look at the build recommendations for the season. I'll incorporate it, but I've also been playing the spec, you know, in a dedicated way long enough that I know which rules I feel comfortable breaking. So I will certainly, you know, if there's stuff I really want to have, I will incorporate it into my build, even if it's not considered to be correct or meta or whatever. I mean, obviously, if it's bad, if it presents a problem, I'm not going to stick with it. But it's just a lot. There's a lot of changes here. This is the most changes they've done to Prot Warrior since Dragonflight Alpha. Really, like the spec hasn't changed very much since the early days of Dragonflight testing. And there's a couple new talents that I'm interested in using. I think there's actually some really good options for dealing damage. So if you're not building out to do some really challenging, you know, tanking content, I think this could be great for delves or outdoor stuff, or even just doing like lower difficulty rating, just some more options to really pump up execute and stuff like that. So that's kind of fun. And yeah, we'll see. I'm not, you know, I'm not going to say that the sky is falling over the spell block thing, but it was a really powerful tool while we've had it these last couple years. And I think the new tools they put in have been, there's still some good potential to have counterplay for magic damage within this tree. But, you know, how powerful is it going to feel? And are they going to bring down the threat level of some of the spiky magic damage within the content that we're playing? Because that's been, you know, there have been times in the last 2 expansions where it's like, okay, if you don't have spell block for this pack, you are going to die. Right? So if we can avoid that, if we can live in a world where we don't need that, then we don't need it. So that's what I'm looking towards, and that's how I'm sort of approaching, okay, what are things I definitely want to incorporate into my builds to start the season out and try as I'm learning the pool, where the really particularly dangerous stuff is, everything like that.
Yeah, I definitely remember the packs back in the day where a warrior would charge in and it's 3 casters who all start channeling some ginormous shadow bolt or something. And if they didn't hit spell block or damage reflect or spell reflect or anything like that, they would just get wrecked instantly. And so you had to really manage that well. Okay. Delve wise, this is an interesting one. So while Jason was combing through these notes, this ginormous document of notes that Blizzard put out, he came across something that there's just been like no communication about that we've seen anywhere. So FYI, the Delvers race has begun. Apparently, the Horde and Alliance are going to compete head to head on which faction can complete the most delves in Season 3. The faction that reaches the goal first, which I'm kind of confused as to which one can have the most in the whole season, and they say which one can reach the goal first. So I don't know if they figured that out yet, but we'll find out. Will have their faction's banner planted permanently in Dornogal's Delvers headquarters. So when the faction reaches this milestone, players will be awarded with Horde and Alliance themed paint colors for emblems for their Delvers dirigible mount with no matter who finishes first. So regardless of whoever finishes first, you're still going to get these paint colors, which would be very cool. I think the dirigible and like a Horde themed coloration, same thing with Alliance themed coloration, I'm super excited about. But also a little weird to be like, yeah, you get your banner if you're the winner planted there, but they use two different ways to describe this. It's a race where they go head to head, but it's the first faction to reach a goal. However, they say which faction can complete the most delves in season 3. So you're like, which is there a race to first to 5,000 or 5 million delves or something? Or is it who completes the most in season 3? Because that's, yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like there's a finish line. The wording is a little weird, but that makes sense, right? Because they can't wait until it's over, because then we're going to leave Dornegal and we're never going to hang out there again. Whatever the goal they set will probably be met, mid patch, and then
you'd hope, yeah.
It'll be actually players in there and interacting in that space for the duration of the expansion. So I think it makes sense to have like a cap. It's the first faction to reach X number of delves completed. You win, your banners go up in the headquarters.
Yeah.
It's cool. Yeah. I don't know why I didn't see this anywhere else, not on socials, not on, any other blog posts they put out, not in previous, build notes or anything. It was just in the official update notes.
Yeah.
Is where they announced this. So I don't know if this is going to start week 1 of patch, or if it says in season 3, so I assume it starts the 12th. So maybe we'll get some more communication about it, next week. But pretty cool. I like the idea. I like having something kind of low stakes that you can put in the game world that players can influence. It's cool. Like, does it really matter whose banners are outside the headquarters? Like, no, it means nothing really in terms of the overall way we play the game or whatever. But I think it's a cool thing players could try to participate in and, kind of, help out their team and everything like that. So it's neat. And I don't know. Yeah, I don't know why they haven't mentioned anything about it, but maybe we'll see more this week.
And I like analytics. I've always liked analytics, and this is a great way to find out how many Alliance delves versus Horde delves are happening. So that's hopefully they share a whole bunch of like a whole. I'd love to get an info doc on like, here's delves in season 3, and you get like all the like people who died, the levels they're running them at, like all that kind of stuff would be really neat to see some of that stuff that they put in there. Okay, as far as dungeons go. They've reduced in Mythic Dungeons creature health by 2% and creature damage done by 10%. There's a note that goes along here that says player damage is currently higher than expected. While this change won't fully close the gap between player damage and creature health, we're making and this is creature damage done reduced by 4% that they added on top of this for Mythic Plus, just to clarify what this note is referring to. We're making an increase to creature health to better support class gameplay in dungeons. The net effect of this change would be that season 3 dungeons will feel slightly easier than the equivalent dungeon of a season 2 dungeon for similar geared characters. We'll continue monitoring balance throughout the testing and look forward to your feedback, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, they in Mythic Dungeons, we saw 10% reduced to creature damage and 2% to health. In Mythic Plus, we saw an increase in the health of creatures by 14%, but a decrease in their damage by 4%. So they're wanting things to live a little longer inside Mythic Plus. They are saying it's going to be easier than it was in season 2, but they've decreased the damage by 4%. So, this is, again, I'm talking numbers for things that people haven't been exposed to nearly as much yet. So, this doesn't land as hard hitting, but just keeping in mind that their objective here is kind of the thing we want to focus in on, which is that the net of this effect should be that season 3 dungeons will feel slightly easier than the equivalent difficulty of a season 2 dungeon for a similarly geared character. So just keeping that in mind, that's the objective they're trying to achieve. And we will see how well they achieve that, because there's been change after change after change of these so far every week.
Yeah, it sounds good to me. I think season 2 felt really good. The on-ramp to sort of working your way up the keystone ranks, getting your milestones for ratings and everything felt maybe the best ever. And if their goal is to bring in season 3 even a little lower than that sounds great, because you have an infinitely scaling system. There's always another +1 rank that your key could theoretically go up to, and it's going to be that much harder. So I'm fine with them making it more accessible at the lower end, letting people get into the system, learn the dungeons, get some upgrades for the characters, and start chasing those various milestones and getting them done earlier in the season, maybe pushing higher, maybe not, whatever. Yeah, I think it's a good goal to have. I think, season 1 War Within was probably too hard, but I don't think it was as much of an outlier as maybe we've seen. Season 1's always seemed really hard to me because there's so much new stuff at the outset of an expansion, but it felt like the community had sort of reached this boiling point of like, we don't want this system to be this punishing. Like, this isn't fun. And so I think they shifted on that. But again, that's the benefit of having a system where you can always do that next rank. So, yeah, we'll see how it ultimately feels. But I like the design goal here. That's what I want to hear.
Yeah, I think that's really the thing to take away from this isn't so much the percentages, but more so the objective. All right, speaking of objectives, player versus player, tanks inside of particularly battleground formats, this underrepresented specialization that you just barely see in there, where normally when you see a tank queue into a battleground, you think, well, that's going to be our flag carrier. They're the tank. That makes perfect sense. And they want that to be the case. They say, we would like the intuitive choice of having a tank carry the flag to be generally correct and viable if they are present in a match. They're also looking for making a global change to focus assault and brutal assault with the goal of reducing the one-shot possibilities and movement speed punishment at high stacks while making damage feel stickier by reducing healing taken. So the changes to focused and brutal assault are that it now increases damage taken by 8%, down from 10 per stack, and decreases healing taken up to 8% from 5%. And Brutal Assault's movement penalty is now reduced by 30%. So that is something to keep in mind, that they're attempting to bring tanks into the position that, like, just intuitively they should be inside of these battlegrounds when we're seeing them in PvP. So I like seeing this. I really enjoy queuing up as a Guardian Druid into PvP with a full set of Guardian gear, feeling really strong. It feels very weird to get a flag, hang onto a flag for a while, and then one rogue shows up and just kills you. You're like, oh, I guess I've been holding this flag too long. Like, dang. Yeah, that's not cool.
Yeah, I don't know. I think, there's been a problem for a long time with tanks in battlegrounds, because sort of the philosophy or the complaint that the devs had stated a long time ago is that if a tank is having fun in PvP, then probably nobody else is having any fun.
Right.
And I get that. It's a tough balance to strike. I mean, I don't know how this is really gonna feel or work out. Part of the problem, I guess, is most players are probably approaching battlegrounds like very casually, just kind of queuing into unrated BGs and messing around or whatever. And like, you don't know that there's going to be a niche to have a flag carrier in whatever battleground you end up in, right? And it's, I don't know, it's sort of an awkward thing to queue in a tank spec because you just know the reaction that other players are going to have to you doing that in the first place. It's a weird thing, and I think what I like about tanking gameplay in general isn't really compatible with PvP in World of Warcraft anyway. But I think it is weird to have one of the 4 roles in the game, 5 roles maybe if you count Augmentation Evoker, just sort of like totally unrepresented and useless in a mode like Random Battlegrounds that like anybody should be able to play and just have something that they can contribute. So we'll see. I don't know. Is this gonna influence me to hop in and do some random BGs? Probably not at this point in my WoW career, but I'm glad that they're at least trying to do something with it.
Yeah, that's good to see. Okay. Temple of Katmagu. This is a neat change. I just like this change. This is just a neat change. Floating text now appears on the player to signify when they're generating points for their team. I just think that's neat. I think it's a neat thing to be like, yeah, actually, when you're earning points in Temple of Katmagu, it is visible to you. So you're aware of, what that frequency is. It's easier to pay attention to it. You don't necessarily need an add-on checking that for you. It's just a good change. So I just wanted to mention that in there as well. Professions. This is something that, obviously people would have big questions about if you haven't been looking into it yet. There are new gathering materials local to Koresh. These new materials can be exchanged for Kazhogar materials at particular vendors that are there. Their names are not easy names. It's Muse and Raka, I think is how you say them, but we'll find out. It might be Amrika. I don't know. An introductory quest line, which will probably tell you what their names are, hopefully in some sort of, in-game verbal, storytelling, will trigger when the players gather new ore or herbs. So when you first gather them, you'll get a quest line. You don't have to worry about going to go pick up a quest line anywhere. When you first gather, you'll get that quest line, and you'll figure out how that works. As far as alchemy goes, we're seeing new healing potion, obviously. Mentioned that before. There's a new potion called Umbra Essentia, which lets you slink into the darkness, reducing your chance for enemies to detect your presence. The effect lasts 20 seconds to 1 minute, depending on the quality of the potion, and ends upon moving. So this is their shadow meld, replacement for folks who want to use a shadow meld. That is just something to keep in mind, that is coming in. The enchanting stuff that we saw here, we got a Gleeful Glamour. This is for the ethereals, so there's a new recipe for the enchanters out there. The glamours, these Gleeful Glamours, are super, super easy to make and are a great way to farm up a whole bunch of knowledge points. So if you're like just getting into enchanting, you can go into this tree and basically earn more points than what you put into it, which is wonderful. You just get so much more out of it. So definitely keep that in mind, because you just earn so many points by being like, hey, I'm going to learn how to make these 7 Gleeful Glamours. Well, that might have cost you 5 knowledge points to get to, but you then gain 7 Gleeful Glamour knowledge points by crafting them. So you see this huge refund kind of thing happen with Gleeful. So definitely a nice one to see. As far as Inscryption goes, there's obviously a new contract for the Koresh Trust, which is the new faction out there. They're putting in a new recipe for a deal, and this is called, you make basically a deal that earns you the right to call yourself one of them for the week. So this is like, you have a bunch of new deals. There's different cartels, so Cartel Ba, Ohm, and Zo, and you get to call yourself one of them for the week. So I'm curious as to what this is going to do. I didn't actually look this up or look into this at all, but my assumption is these are something you're going to want to be able to gain access to certain vendors and perks for that week, which I think will be neat. And you probably can only use one a week, and so you choose which one you want to use. As far as Inscryption goes, similar to, I guess, what you'd see with some of the contract stuff that was out there. So keep that in mind. There's a new Vantis rune, which you should expect, and there's an inspired writer's quill, which sometimes all it takes is to be inspired by a new quill. Use this to add the collection of steamy romance novels you can write with your steamy romance novel kit. So if you're looking to write some more steamy romance novels, they gave you a new quill to, I guess, be inspired and write some more of those, which is kind of neat. There's a bunch of Reshi wrap stuff for tailors. So tailors are going to be looking forward to being able to add haste, versatility, mastery, or critical strike to people's Reshi wraps with different recipes. So that's an exciting thing for you all. We already mentioned the bank revamp, but it's something I wouldn't mind just touching on again here. Characters Bank has been updated and now uses the same configurations as the Warbank, which means your normal bank screen is now going to be configured to look more like the Warbank. You're going to get additional tabs. Those tabs will exist for each of the bags that you previously had. They're going to have each tab being 98 slots, so you're gaining a lot of bank space, but you're losing that more traditional bank look that you were getting before. These 6 tabs can be purchased overall, and they, it's 1 gold, 100 gold, 500 gold, 1,000 gold, 200, 2,500 gold, and 5,000 gold. So not expensive to buy. I actually, in preparation for this, was like, hey, I should buy another Warbank tab. So I did. So I bought the 250,000 Warbank tab just to have another one so I can, spread stuff out even easier when I'm doing this organization. Bank tabs are automatically unlocked on login, so just keep that in mind. You don't need to do anything special. At level 80, all tabs are unlocked automatically, so if you haven't unlocked them earlier, at level 80, it will just unlock them. For characters below level 80, the number of tabs available will be based on how many bag slots, including reagent bag and void storage, were available to the character before the update. So if you'd purchased out all of your bag slots and everything, and you had your reagent bank and your void storage and all that was fully unlocked, you will get all the tabs earlier on for that character. You're not losing any bag space. They're making sure that what they're giving us is more than what we had, so no one runs into this issue of a bunch of items being mailed to you and this creating a big problem, right? They're removing the reagent bank, but obviously they're giving us tabs, so you're just getting another bank tab as opposed to reagent bank, which makes sense because that way you can use it for things that aren't necessarily just reagents. And I know myself, I'm already just throwing all my reagents into the Warband bank because I want to use them on all my characters. So there's very few things, like I think I'm using like 12 spaces inside of my reagent tab on most of my characters, if that, So I'm glad to get that extra bank space anyways. The entire character bank can now be crafted out of just like the reagent bank. So you basically are set to go on that. And void storage has been removed entirely. Obviously, it's becoming a new tab. So all your void storage stuff will just go into some of these tabs. All previously contained in character bank, all items previously contained in character banks, reagent banks, and void storage are automatically moved to available slots in the new bank upon login to the patch. This is why I want to clear out my void storage to a certain degree, because I don't want to like basically find a bunch of my void storage items mixed in with all of my current items and be like, why is it like this? So I want to be sure I have a plan for that. Please note that during times of great demand, it is possible for the conversion to not initiate when you first log into your character. Additionally, until the conversion is completed, access to your bank will be disabled. So if you log in, you can't access your bank. It might be one of those things where you just have to log out, wait a few minutes, log back in again, see if it actually picks up and grabs you that time for that conversion. Just keep that in mind. And yeah, that's the bank change stuff we're going to be seeing. Outside of that, Warband's currency transfer window will remain open after the transfer transaction, so you can actually see what that did and doesn't just close out automatically, which I think is great. And I guess something else to note here for folks that are really paying attention to it, like Tuesday this week, so before the 5th. Is your cutoff for moving Valor Stones around. If you're someone who wants to move a bunch of Valor Stones onto a character, do it before Tuesday, because then it's, you won't be able to for a little while till they unlock that again. That just stops people from funneling a bunch of Valor Stones from their alts to their main once we've launched into a new season. So just be sure you're getting that done, the way you want it to, move stuff around the way you want it to. Man, all right, yeah, that is
one thing.
Oh, go ahead. Sure.
Sorry, one thing I want to say about the bank tabs is like, if you have time to get in there and do this before patch comes down, like if you have a character that isn't max level and you don't have all of your bank stuff purchased, I just did this on the Maghar I was playing. You buy the bank tabs because they're 25 gold.
Yeah.
So I just went around and bought all that stuff because it's way cheaper than this is like what 9K gold, give or take. It's over 8K gold to buy the 6 tabs on a character that doesn't have them. So I just figured, you know what? I know this is going to be way cheaper to do it this way. I might play this character. I didn't do it on every single character that I have because it's just way too much and probably will never even matter. Yeah, it's like I'm never even really going to play this character or need this storage, so why bother? But especially with the war bank and everything. But yeah, if you have something you want to play that maybe is, you're leveling up, or maybe you never bought all that stuff, whatever. If you can get in there before patch maintenance, you can probably save some gold on that. Yeah. This is also the spell density change comes in on Tuesday too, and I don't know if it's going to default or whatever, but you might want to check that out. I kind of feel I'm expecting him to default it, and that it'll be by default changed to reduced. But check it out; it'll be in your user options somewhere. I don't know exactly where at the moment, but you can probably just search for spell density since you can search it these days.
Yeah.
I definitely want to check out the reduced setting and see if it just, helps clean up the way the game reads visually. It should help a lot. It's cool to have like big, loud spell effects, but also I don't want to die because I couldn't see that I wasn't standing in the right thing.
Yeah, I still remember the complaint that was happening. It was that at first they thought it was evokers that were doing it because evokers also do it, but it's also hunters with like creatures flying overhead during a spell effect. There's like a wyvern that hunters can have that like swoops in and does stuff. The evokers have like their own little like flight of dragon kin sort of fly in and do stuff like that. That is a problem visually for a lot of people. They see that movement, they think it's an ad or something's happening. And so yeah, I'm down for having more abilities to reduce clutter, particularly on some of these fights where there's so many visuals happening. Okay, Reshiram's, phase diving, and more. There was a blog post that came in here, which is going to be almost the last one we cover in the show. There's still a little bit more to get into here, so it is a chunky of a show. I know we're already hitting the 2-hour mark, so I want to be sure we're not missing out on anything, but I also am aware that everyone's like, man, you're already 2 hours into this, so hopefully this is going well for you. All right, Reshiram's, they harness the power of ethereals and see the world through their eyes with these Reshiram's. You claim your Reshiram's by undertaking a new campaign in Koresh and lay claim to new powerful artifacts of the Reshiram's. So this obviously happens August 5th. Keep that in mind. is when you're earning this, because it's all part of that new campaign and stuff that we're checking out. I doubt it's part of the last chapter. That'd be very weird for them to do. So this should be available week 1. The quest at the end of chapter 3 of the campaign is what it looks like they're talking about here, where you get yourself some extra strands to slot into the cloak. So yes, it looks like we are good to go for next week, based off of where they're talking about chapter-wise for this. Even though they didn't actually just tell us straight up, hey, Rescue Wraps are available on the 5th. That would have been nice to do. But anyways, so there you go. The Rescue Wraps themselves are going to allow you to participate in phase diving. So you'll travel to the Overlook of Zoshun and speak with him, and he'll help you enable your Rescue Wraps to harness ethereal energies, and you can purchase other fibers from Harim to slot into your wrap. To upgrade your wraps, you'll need to use the ethereal strands to purchase additional enhancements. You can also buy those from Hashim, and these strands can be earned in Delves, Mythic Plus, PvP, and across Khazalgar. In Koresh, you can additionally seek them from Manaforge Omega and by completing warrants. You can earn up to 15 strands to empower your Rescue Wraps, and the empowerment costs 3 strands each and has 1 rank each, so that's 5 ranks. The Rescue Wraps will upgrade and scale up to 5 ranks, as they say, and this will include new visuals as you progress through the content. Hashim can also help you keep track of how many strands you've collected. There's a boon of the Reshi, which is an instant. You imbue energy into your Rescue Wraps, enhancing its power, unlocking the power for the Rescue Wraps to attune to your specialization, granting you Ethereal Reaping, where harmful spells and abilities have a chance to focus latent energies around you to inflict arcane damage split between you and nearby enemies. So it's split between your target and nearby enemies, and enemies below 35% health take 20% increased damage. So yeah, that's sort of like the boon that you can get put onto this thing once you get it leveled up enough. So that's kind of neat for folks to check out. The Secrets of the Depths, basically, as you imbue more energy into your Rescue Wraps and enhance its power, an ethereal presence now lingers in Khazalgar Delves, revealing secret rooms. You can now find phase orbs that increase your primary stat while phase diving. These phase orbs have a chance to recover a phase lost appearance, so you can get some cosmetics from that. And the Orbs of Power, where they imbue more energy into your Rescue Wraps, enhancing its power. Enemies killed while phase diving now have a chance to drop an orb that increases your primary stats. Phase orbs have a chance to recover a lost appearance. That's another thing you can put into this. What Lies Beneath is another one where you imbue your wraps with What Lies Beneath, and you can now see treasures while phase diving. And Regalia of the Reshi, where you imbue more energy in your Reshi Wraps and you unlock the appearance of Reshi Cowl and Reshi Scrolls. So some more appearances for folks in there. So it looks like overall lots of cosmetics and little like fun power gains, similar to what we were seeing inside Delves with the overloaded Delves. So a similar way of taking part in that. But phase diving itself. So I'll let you go first, then we'll dive into phase diving.
Well, I just wanted to just mention a couple things here.
Sure.
They do spell out that your alts can just immediately travel to the Overlook and obtain their cloak. So you don't have to do the quest 15 times to get all your different cloaks.
Yeah.
So thank you. That's great. Also, it seems like, if I'm reading this correctly, we should be receiving 3 ethereal strands from completing the quest that grants the cloak. So you should be able to get your rank 1 boon right away the first week, and then it seems like it would take another 4 weeks of collecting your 3 ethereal strands per week to unlock all the powers on the cloak. So that's not too bad. That's not some massive grind. Like, I loved having upgradable artifacts. I know that the phrase upgradable artifacts inflict psychic damage on some WoW players. So this is not some super long tail grind. You're not getting minuscule amounts of power. You go play the content you want to play, assuming that you want to do Delves, Mythic Dungeons, PvP, or raids. You get your ethereal strands, you turn them into the vendor, you get more powerful. You can select the secondaries that you want on the cloak by using the fabric. Sounds very cool. The boon that they give the example of, the power on the cloak, that's a DPS one. Unfortunately, you can't like pick which power you want to use or like have a different. It's like locked to your spec, which is unfortunate for tanks because the tank ability as I kind of mentioned, I think a couple weeks ago, is not super powerful and is also on a really long cooldown when it procs. So one thing we might have to really be careful of at the outset of the season is you want to make sure that you have like a big CD loaded up for a pull, because you don't want to accidentally proc your cloak and then it's not going to be available when you need it for another 6 minutes. So, done a lot of tuning to the cloak in the last couple weeks. They tuned the tank cloak up quite a bit and then moved it back a little bit. The DPS cloak, they buffed quite a bit. So, I mean, it should be, it should be a really nice thing to have for DPS players. It should feel really nice in those kind of execute or pseudo execute phases with the below 35% health effect. So that's really cool. But yeah, this seems like a thing that we should be able to move through somewhat quickly, right? I don't think the game is asking you to do too much here to max out your Reshiwraps. Log in, play the game on a weekly basis, and within the first month of the patch, you'll have all this stuff. Also, it's pretty cool that all the power is front loaded, right? Like you get the power on the cloak week 1.
Yeah, right
the
away.
Other stuff just is like a cool bonus if you're doing delves and if you want to check out the extra rooms or if you want to do stuff in the outdoor world. It's sort of like you get all the coolest stuff the earliest. All the stuff you need the most you get kind of right away, and then the other stuff is sort of like, the last unlock is you get appearances. Like that's cool. And it's kind of a nice sort of way to say, hey, like, thanks for participating in the system, I guess. But if all you really care about is the proc, then you get the proc week 1 from the way it seems like they're laying it out here.
All right. The phase diving itself, though, once you get your actual new artifact cloak, you'll talk to Shadanis in the Overlook, and you'll be able to get the quest for another world. And basically it gives you a different way to look at Koresh using your cloak. And so you go phase diving. And this is similar to, I would imagine, what we saw with like Mechagon Island and whatnot, where like it would, essentially phase you to the future kind of idea. It's a similar kind of phasing sort of thing that you'd experience, is my guess. I don't know. I haven't done it yet. Using phase conduits enables you to enter and exit untethered space so that you can move between phases of being. Travel between the conduits the same as you would with any flight paths. Interesting. Okay, so it might be speaking with someone to actually take you into a conduit. The conduits throughout Koresh are Shadow Point, Untethered Space, Fracture of Lacuna, Shandora, the Oasis, North Sufad, Lunal River, Serrated Peaks, Nakora, Hazos Rest, Ruins of Yathion, and Tazesh, the Veiled Market. So, first of all, I really want to see a dive in Koresh, or in Tazavesh. That could be really, really neat for the Veiled Market. But also, like, there's a lot of them, is what I was trying to emphasize there. There's like a whole bunch of these that you're going to be able to experience and check out. There's going to be different, rewards for going into each of them. And they basically say you'll also learn and collect phase energy when you take your first phase dive. Phase energy is consumed by creatures in untethered space, and they're also sought after as one of the ingredients used to power the ecodomes. And you're going to get a new currency called Untethered Coins, where while phase diving, you're going to collect this currency, and these can be spent for a variety of items from Shadanis. And the Untethered Coins are also Warbank transferable, so that you can essentially a strange coin found within the untethered space can be moved around for different folks to be able to buy toys, cosmetics, pets, that kind of stuff, which you can earn by completing a quest that is there. And yeah, they then go down a list of all the different things you can get. And it's a big list of all the different things you can get. So this is another one of those currency time sinks where if you're like, hey, I want to put in the effort and time, I can get these. They even have like an ethereal stall where you drop down an ethereal stall that lasts 15 minutes. I think this could be cool for setting up your own little shop if that's something you're talking about doing. They have all sorts of stuff of toys and different cosmetics here for people to check out and pick up. So I think this is another one of those, hey, here's the new faction, here's the new activity, here's a carrot attached to that if that's something you're interested in doing. Here's a bunch of cosmetics you can get. So I think that's great to see. And I'm looking forward to trying out phase diving. I don't know if it's going to hook me as much because it seems a little bit less about character power itself. But, it could be something where there's cosmetics I just feel like I need to have. And I dive into that.
Yeah, I mean, one thing about it, too, is when you're phased, you should have different world quests and stuff you can do. So rep and all that's going to be pretty important at the outset. So... I think there'd be reasons to check it out. I guess, like I'll certainly be doing it because I'm gonna want to be doing as many world quests as I can per rotation and just getting as much stuff as I can find. And so, yeah, I think that'll be cool. The question will be like, how much of these coins are we really finding? Nothing. It's all like small integers, right? It's like 3 coins for a toy, or 5 coins for a transmog ensemble, something like that. So, are we finding like a couple of them a day? Are we finding a couple of them a week? Like, what sort of does that look like? And I guess we'll find out. I mean, there's a lot of cool stuff. There's a bunch of toys, which toys are always, a fun thing to collect. They're the thing I like collecting the best, probably. There's like 5 of those. So, yeah, I don't know. I feel like this is maybe just a way to inject some more stuff into the game to do in a, like the Koresh zone is not massive. It's not like a huge zone. So this way it sort of like doubles the real estate in a way, because, well, okay, there's the phase you walk into, and then there's phase diving. And
right.
So it kind of gives them a chance to just put some different points of interest in the space without having an entirely separate zone. So,
yeah.
I mean, if anybody who's listened to the show for a long time knows I love doing outdoor world content and just sort of like, hanging out there, doing stuff, collecting things, doing all those sort of objectives on a daily and weekly basis. So I'm sure I'll be doing it. I'll get in there. It is the kind of deal though, like you said, there's really no implication on your raid or dungeon or PvP readiness through this system. Yeah. Like there's cool perks and stuff through the renown track. And I'm sure like if this unlocks access to more quests that you can do, then obviously that's going to get you up that renown tier faster. But your main thing for that is go do the campaign quest, get your Reshi wraps, and get your proc activated, get the correct secondaries on it. And then if you really don't ever want to do any of this because it doesn't impact your key grinding, then you don't have to. But yeah, it's just another option to explore the space, and going to a different planet in this game is always kind of cool. And Koresh is a pretty interesting destination. So yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, more stuff to do there along the ecological domes. We got a blog post that came out about that just to remind people about what that feature is going to be. You're going to undertake world quests and dailies as you lend aid in towards transforming this barren landscape into a lush, vibrant ecology. As you progress through several layers, you'll see the fruit of your labor come to life within the dome. So I like that just initial thought of like, hey, as you progress through the storyline, these domes are going to evolve and grow and flourish in different ways. I think that's really neat to see like your character's actions actually having an effect on things. There's probably going to be some in-game cinematics associated with that too, which I think could be really neat. Reminds me a little bit of like back in Legion when we were helping the tree grow and then eventually blossom fruit again. Like that was just really kind of a neat process. So doing that on a much larger sort of dome scale could be kind of neat to see. Each phase offers unique creatures, resources, and environmental challenges. Your actions, completing quests, restoring balance, and defeating threats influence the outcome of the world's evolution. To get started, you'll begin in Koresh with a new campaign, and as part of the progression, you'll help someone, I'm still leaving that non-spoilery for people, to protect the Ecodome Primus from invading Shadowguard and get your first look inside an Ecodome so that, you can help out with that entire aspect. Once you complete chapter 4 of the campaign, so this means, this is at least August 12th is the earliest you could do this. But once you've completed chapter 4, Shadows on Guard, you'll get a new quest, the Oasis, and that'll be from someone in Tazavesh, and you'll seek out the Oasis Ecodome. And your work will begin in earnest as you progress through the various quests available and begin traveling between Azeroth and Koresh to help fill the stores of creatures within the Ecodome. Hopefully you don't mind getting a little dirty. It will take some trial and error to get the balance just right, but the outcome could mean healing for Koresh. So this is a really neat paragraph that I hadn't seen before. This isn't something that like they'd put out a lot of information about. If the objective here is you being like, hey, I want to fill up Ecodomes in Koresh with Azerothian creatures and, flora and fauna, that could be really neat to see that happen, because like, I don't know, the pet battle itch in the back of my brain just got scratched of like, oh, maybe I have to go out and capture certain creatures, bring them there, and then turn them in, and that means that then those creatures are now free within this ecodome and having, you know, a good time there. And maybe they throw in some quest content where you're like saving injured ones or sick ones, and you're, you know, bringing them out to this ecodome to live out a happier life or whatever it is, right? Could be kind of a neat thing. So I like that. That is very neat. You can recruit 3 specialists to help you along the way, who will have additional quests for you. One of these specialists is a familiar face with Hemet Nezingwary, who's senior in joining your efforts. So I also feel this is a little weird. Hemet's the one who we do all the kill quests for on animals, and now he's preserving them. So he's clearly, you know, he's matured. He's
turned over a new leaf.
Yeah.
Well, he's like retired, right? Because we saw him at the 20th thing, right? And he had a booth at the 20th anniversary celebration, and so Hemet's turned over a new leaf. Now he's a conservationist, so that's cool. This feature sounds like a really fun kind of side project. Like, definitely, again, no impact on character power. This is not a thing you're going to be doing so that you can then get accepted to, you know, a mythic plus 16 pug. This is just a thing to do if you think it's cool. You know what? This really it almost reminds me of the Pandaria farm in a way. Like, obviously this is animals and not vegetables, but it kind of reminds me of that. I sort of feel like this kind of bridges the gap between where we are right now and housing. You know, it's this element of the world that you can see your character's impact on it, and you have this kind of space to sort of hang out and revitalize. It seems really cool. I'm interested in it, and I'm kind of a sucker for anything that has you go back to older content, and kind of reuse it in some way, or like reference something cool about it. So yeah, I'll definitely be doing this. It seems like a fun thing to do. It's also cool that you get you know, there's like a questing system around it, and you get like there's additional, like the companion, the specialists as they call them. So you have like some other NPCs to interact with, and I'm sure they'll have some, you know, different preferences or whatever, right? They probably have different things that they want you to do for them. So just to add some variety to the system. So yeah, it seems cool. I think it's definitely something. Like I said, I'm going to try to dive into everything I possibly can patch week before season starts, because you know, I'm going to have so much time locked in once season is up and running that is accounted for from group play. So this is the kind of stuff I really want to hit hard out of the gate and do this stuff as soon as I can. Obviously, we can't do all of the Ecodome stuff in week 1, but still, just make sure I'm up to date with that. And I think this could be a really cool feature and just kind of a fun way to hang out and do stuff in WoW and in current content when you don't really know what you want to do, or your friends aren't around or whatever. I think the more stuff like that WoW has, the better. And there's some people who just really
love this. Yeah.
Just more focus on stuff like this. Yeah. Like the collecting aspect, or, you know, being able to like see your character's impact in the game world.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's a lot of people out there that this fits in for. That is just a great, hey, I want to have an impact. I want it to be solo. I don't want it to be hard. I just want it to be something that I need to spend some time doing on a regular basis. And this just fits perfectly in there. As I was saying, you get these wriggling pinnacle caches out of completing this, which have items like pets and mounts and stuff in it. So it's certainly something to check out and participate in, because I think it'd be really neat what you get. I would love for systems in the game to exist like this, where the wriggling pinnacle cache could hold, like, yes, there's XYZ high chance drops, but then some rare ones fitting in there. Since you're collecting stuff from Azeroth, it'd be very neat if you get some rare mounts inside that sort of stuff that are like older mounts.
Yeah, true. Also considering that we're like, you know, we're on Koresh, right? So we're dealing with the ethereals and the brokers and stuff, right? And what do they have? Like, they have all kinds of stuff in their collection, right? They're collectors, they're traders, they're travelers, all that. So
yeah, that
would definitely fit. And that's true. This is another pinnacle cache source. So if you're tired of doing Awakening the Machine or whatever, right? Yeah. Like I assume, I don't know for sure, but I assume all the existing pinnacle cache sources are going to persist, and then we're going to get new ones on Koresh, this being one of them. And because that's another thing that I got to get back into, because I haven't cared about that in a like, I don't know, a month or two now. It's like, okay, make sure I get my Pinnacle caches because I want my keys. You know,
Right.
I'm going to want to. I'll be doing Bountiful Delves on the Warrior the first few weeks to get hero pieces and stuff. That'll fall off, but that's the primary way that I play my alts. Right, is doing delves for hero track pieces. So got to start. I don't know if we'll get keys this week. We may not get Bountiful keys before we can use them, but
I don't know. I know
it'd be great
that
if we could just start stockpiling them.
I know that I intentionally used a map so that I had you're guaranteed to get the Bountiful drop at the end of the next Bountiful you run, just so I have the buff up, and then I also have one in my bag. So I literally am just leaving it in that state and being like, all right, let's just see what happens week one. You
Right.
never know, right? So just having that buff on, I don't know. We'll see what happens with it. But all right, there's one last thing to cover this episode, and that is that it's August, so we hit a new one of those trading posts. It's up there, it's running. This whole month seems to be very chess themed. If you're someone who's a fan of black or white themed transmog, checkerboard, mounts, all sorts of crazy business with that. If you want a mace that looks like, you know, the knight piece from chess, you can get it. It's all there. So if you're looking for spending some Trader's Tender on some chess stuff, by all means, go for it. It's not really my month, I would say, based off looking at what's here. But it's a neat theme. It's just not one that I feel like I want to invest Tender in. I kind of want to hang on to my Tender to see when I get that really juicy month that comes up. I wasn't capping my Tender every month during Dragonflight, so I'm just up over 3,000. Jason's up over 9,000. So I kind of want to stockpile a bit so that if we get another one of those really big events that kicks off where there's, 1,500 a month that you're wanting to spend, I'm not feeling like I don't have it. So I'm choosing to save. But yeah, this is a neat month to check out all the chess stuff that's there and earn your Tender towards that.
Yeah, the bonus is a mount. It's like it's one of the surfboard, the Sky surfboard things, but it's like a chessboard. I think it's the black and red one, right? That is the and then the black and white one is on the store.
Yeah.
Like the theme doesn't really super grab me, but it's very well executed.
It is.
I will say, I was looking at it in game, and there is actually a shield that goes with the transmog set, which a lot of times there's not. And for a character that uses a shield, that can present kind of a challenge, but there is a shield, and it's cool because the bottom part of the shield, like as you're holding it up, the bottom part, like the squares are sort of like broken away, like when you go into Return to Karazhan and like the chessboard's all busted up and like getting sucked into the nether or whatever. Like it sort of has that effect off the bottom of the shield, which is kind of neat. So yeah, there's some stuff. I'm pretty thrifty with my Tender, and because the thing is, I go all the way in when I love the theme, and the trading post seems to be like heavily based around themes. Yeah. So if I don't like a theme, I pretty much just don't get anything, and if I like a theme, then I get everything. But I mostly just don't. The themes don't speak to me enough. I don't know. For this month, I might end up buying the stuff that matches the mount, just because it's kind of cool. It's different, and also. It's pretty Karazhan themed, which is cool, with being one of my favorite, places in the game ever, right. Really. So maybe I will. It's the stuff is not that expensive to get, like, the pieces that match. So that I might do that. I do want to point out too, there's some really good returning stuff. The Kor'kron Warsaber and the Sentinel Warwolf, which are like, what if the Night Elves had a wolf, and what if the Orcs had a panther kind of thing, which is cool. And Wargly, which is a Murloc pet, is back, so they're returning. So they're pretty good returning items for this month as well. But yeah, no big bonuses or anything. Last month with the Forsaken thing, we had 3 monthly rewards that we got from filling up the bar. The bar was extended. We got extra Tender. Nothing of that kind of thing this month. I'm hoping that we know that a bunch of Dwarven stuff got data mined, and I'm kind of hoping that September is Dwarf month. Line it up with Brewfest. I mean, what could be more perfect? So, I'm definitely not going all in this month. I'll probably buy a couple things here and there, but I think they pulled the theme off really strong. It's just not something that I feel like I need to have.
Yeah, same. Totally agree. All right, with that, we'd like to take a moment to thank our patrons. They contribute a ton to our show and help us to improve on the content we create. Today I'm giving a special shout out to Arajian, Bradley, Bruce, Chris, James, Garrett, Kapawi, and Shorel. Thank you so much. This is a good shout out for you all. Our Patreon is live over at patreon.com/thestartingzone. We have no new patrons this week, but we do want to say thank you to all of our patrons, past and present, who've helped keep the show up and running and the lights on and, the hosting paid for and that sort of stuff. So we appreciate all of you and looking forward to many more shows to come.
Absolutely. Thank you, patrons. We couldn't do it without you, literally. So thank you for all the support. It's now August of 25, which means we've been doing the show basically weekly for 9 years, give or take, together. And that means 8 years of the Patreon being up. So that's a long time to be doing anything. And it's, we've had some patrons that have been with us basically the whole ride. So it means a lot, and it helps keep the show going and helps people find it. So thanks a lot.
Yeah. Another great way to support the show is by leaving us those 5-star reviews over on your iTunes, your Apple Podcast. They really help out our show, and we love hearing the ones that we can get from our listeners. And if you're someone who is still listening in, I know we just did a giveaway. There's another giveaway we're doing. We're giving away a Volpine Familiar. That's the store mount that you can purchase. This like flying blue fox. It's very cool. That mount is for NA, so North America, South America, Oceanic servers, and this is another one from Blizzard that they're handing out to us. We will be doing that giveaway on next week's episode. We'll actually be handing it out on the 10th. So you can enter this week, same thing as we did for the last entry, because it works so well for everyone who was listening in. So if you want to, you can write us and do Volpine giveaway. There's a good title for your email. Email us at thestartingzone@gmail.com, and you can email in with Volpine giveaway or giveaway, and we'll flag those. And what we want to hear inside this post is what it is about this first week, this August 5th launch that you're most excited to dive into. Is it like getting into these ecodomes? Is it the questing stuff that you're going to have available to story-wise? Is it the bank revamp? What is it? That's the thing that's got you excited for this first week. You write us in there, thestartingzone@gmail.com, giveaway or Volpine Familiar giveaway, whatever it is you want to throw in there, as long as it's obvious that it's for this. And we will flag those and do a giveaway next week. Thanks so much to everyone who listens in, and we're happy to do these giveaways when we can.
Yeah, absolutely. Looking forward to hearing from people about what they're excited for Ghosts. And yeah, thanks to Blizzard for sending us the codes for the giveaway. Again, these did not come out of our pockets. These did not come out of Patreon money. These are codes provided to us from Blizzard to give away to you. So thank you for that. And looking forward to hearing from everybody.
Yeah. With that, it's going to wrap up episode 695 of The Starting Zone. If you want to check out show notes for this episode or leave us a comment on the show, you can head on over to thestartingzone.com, the official website for the Starting Zone podcast. If you want to contact the show and leave us your feedback as a question or enter this giveaway, you can email us at thestartingzone@gmail.com. If you want to just reach out and leave your feedback or ask a question, you can reach us on Twitter at The Starting Zone or over on Blue Sky at thestartingzone.bsky.social, or you can join our Discord server by going to thestartingzone.com/discord. And Jason, where can folks find you on the internet?
You can find me on socials over on Twitter at Shieldwald or on Blue Sky at jlucas.bsky.social. I do check both places regularly. I mostly just post to Blue Sky, so check that out. And you can also find video channels, twitch.tv/Shieldwald and youtube.com/Shieldwald. I did bring stream back to life for the first time in quite a while this week. So that was fun. Thanks to everybody who came and hung out. And I will be streaming more regularly. I'll probably be streaming just patch stuff, dinking around, doing whatever I'm doing outdoors, maybe some Mythic Zeros this week. Probably over on Twitch because drops are coming back. No point in really pushing the live feed to YouTube because people should watch Twitch and get their drops. So come check out the video channels as well.
Nice. Trying to find me, you can find me on Blue Sky at spencerhd.bsky.social, over on Twitter at Spencer_Downey, or over on Twitch at twitch.tv/SpencerHD, or youtube.com/@SpencerHD. And with that, for myself and Jason, we want to say thanks for listening, and jobs done.